The holy light crashed into the center of the green vortex, causing it to instantly crumble. All of the trees around the castle were felt as if violent gusts of winds had forced them into submission. The forest star storm has been terminated. All of the elves stared up at Irina with awe and veneration in their eyes. How could this be? Schubert's eyes widened with shock. That was his signature ultimate forbidden spell, but it had been destroyed by Irina's holy light in seconds. Hadn't she been severely wounded and debilitated when she had returned to the Wind Forest 3 years ago? However, Irina wasn't going to stand around and patiently answer his questions. She had already disappeared. Crap! A hint of caution welled up in Schubert's heart, and he waved his wand to summon a wall consisting of countless vines. At the same time, he attempted to hurtle back in retreat. However, right at that moment, dazzling golden light suddenly erupted from the ball of light that he had been encapsulated in. It contracted violently, instantly immobilizing him. He hadn't sensed any danger from the ball of light, as it wasn't an offensive spell, but a binding one instead. Schubert's heart jolted with shock, and he began to chant a spell to create a green shield of light around him. The shield's color became more and more pronounced, and he frantically looked around, trying to determine where Irina would appear. The sealing magic was only a temporary one, and he would be able to break free from it in 3 more seconds. Irina's power had indeed exceeded his expectations. 3 years ago, she had returned to the Wind Forest and birthed a half-elf child. In the process, she had bled profusely, leading to a drastic drop in her power. Mistress Helena had declared that she would never be able to recover her power as a 10th-tier great magic caster. However, just from the holy light she had summoned to destroy his forest star storm, Schubert could determine that she was already back to full power. In fact, she could be even more powerful than 3 years ago. However, he wasn't cast into despair after making that realization. With his status and the contributions that he had made to the elven race, Mistress Helena and the Queen definitely wouldn't allow him to die like this. He had already made up his mind, after today, he would join forces with the other major officials to exert pressure on the Queen, forcing her to abolish Irina's status as the princess. A new princess would then be chosen from one of the major families. He was aware of the fact that Irina had birthed a child with a human, so even the Queen had to be wary of him in case he spread this news. "I think you know why I want to kill you." Golden light flashed behind Schubert, and Irina slowly emerged. She raised her staff with a frosty expression, and said, "You and everyone who played a role in that incident back then. I will find and kill them one by one. I won't forgive anyone who hurt him and my child. No. You can't kill me, Irina. This will be viewed as treason." Schubert felt as if his entire body had been plunged into a glacial pit as he sensed the magic waves materializing behind him. He suddenly thought back to that rainy night 3 years ago, and that man who had fought valiantly with a child strapped to his chest. His voice had been just as cold back then. At the time, all he did was spectate and unleash a few spells from time to distract him. He was indeed very powerful. Schubert had never seen such a powerful knight, but he was only one person in the end, and was no match for all of them. Schubert still recalled the frosty look in his eyes as he supported himself with his sword. Even though he had already been disabled, his expression still sent chills running down Schubert's spine. "Irina, stop!" The space warped nearby, and Helena appeared in the mid-air with her wand pointed directly at Irina. "Irina, let him go." A gentle voice also sounded at the same time. No one could see where the voice had come from, but all of the elves present bowed their heads in a respectful manner. Splat! A burst of sharp golden light erupted from Irina's staff, piercing through the green magic shield before striking the back of Schubert's head. Several magic barriers had been set up, including even a golden one, but they were still unable to stop her devastating attack. Blood and white intracranial fluids splattered out from his shattered skull as the green light shield crumbled. Schubert's eyes were still wide open in disbelief even as the vitality faded from his body. "Sorry, you're too late." Irina turned to Helena with a mocking smile. Faint golden light shimmered around her staff, cleansing all impurities as if she had just killed an annoying fly. Master Schubert's dead. The Kral family elves were all horrified at the sight of Schubert's lifeless body. As one of the most powerful elven families, they were already used to living under Schubert's protection. However, the pillar of the Kral had been felled without any warning nor reason by Irina, and all of them felt as if the sky were falling on their heads. Ari the princess killed the smiling devil. She killed Schubert. The enslaved elves all looked up at Irina as adrenaline and excitement pumped through their veins. The leader of the Kral, a 10th tier great magic caster, the official presiding over punishments in the elven race. He had devised one law after another to strip them of their freedom, reducing them to lowly slaves. Now that he had fallen under Princess Irina's hands, all of them felt as if holy light were shining down upon their hearts, and that freedom was close within reach. The guests attending the banquet were all horrified. If even someone as important as Schubert had been killed for enslaving elves, then what would become of them? Irina, do you know what you've done? Helena glowered at Irina with a cold expression. Mistress Helena, you have to uphold justice for us. Princess Irina suddenly turned up and killed my brother without any reason. My brother is a highly revered and respected figure in the elven race, and he dedicated his entire life to bettering our race, but he has fallen in such heartbreaking circumstances. An explanation must be provided. Schubert's brother rushed forward with a grief-stricken expression. Mistress Helena, Your Majesty, please uphold justice for us. The Kral family members all fell to their knees in unison. Helena's expression cooled even further, and black light surged behind her as if she were a volcano on the brink of eruption. Do you really not know why I killed him, Helena? Irina turned to Helena with mockery in her eyes. Her long silver hair danced in the air around her, and she completely disregarded the members of the Kral family. According to elven laws, anyone who kills an elven official without a justifiable reason will have judgment passed down upon them by the panel of elders. Irina, you've committed a heinous crime, you must be punished even if you're the princess. Do not resist and I won't hurt you. Helena raised a hand, and the clear skies were suddenly obscured by an inky black night. The entire wind forest was enshrouded in darkness, with only a bright moon and specks of starlight in the sky. Helena stood in midair with starlight shimmering down on her, making her appear as if she were an omnipotent goddess. I only know our elven laws of nature, I don't care about your bullsh*t elven laws. Using human laws to restrict elves is nothing but a joke. Helena, if you want a fight, then a fight is what you shall get. Irina stepped forward, and dazzling light erupted from the tip of her staff as if a bonfire had been lit in the night. At the same time, scintillating light began to glow in the cave where the Tree of Light was situated. A burst of green light pierced through the darkness before injecting itself into Irina's body, creating a bond between the two. Is that star magic? It must be Mistress Helena. At the Brewster family estate, family head Elliot turned toward the west with surprise etched on his face. That was Schubert's territory, and even though it was quite far away, he could still sense some magic waves from afar. He had only just received news that Princess Irina had emerged from her cave, and now, Mistress Helena had sprung into action. What was going on? Immediately afterward, brilliant light erupted from the Tree of Life, lighting up the artificial night. Her Highness has become even more powerful. If she hadn't suffered those injuries 3 years ago, she should have been ready to inherit the Queen's position already. On the Bay Billy family's territory, family leader Vincent was also looking at the green string of light connecting Irina to the Tree of Life. Receiving the approval of the Tree of Life was a prerequisite to becoming the Elven Queen. Those who were unable to do so did not have the right to become the Queen. The incident from 3 years ago dictates that a battle between the Princess and Mistress Helena is inevitable. I wonder what the result will be and whom the Queen will side with this time. As for the young mistress from the Brewster family, as long as the Queen doesn't give upon on Princess Irina, she has no hope at all. Vincent fell into deep thought as his brows furrowed. In the Wind Forest, countless elves looked on with anxiety and anticipation in their hearts. The revered High Priestess and Great Elder of the Elven race, Mistress Helena, was facing off against the widely loved Princess Irina. A clash between the two of them would surely play a great role in deciding the direction the Elven race would take in the future. However, most of the elves didn't know why a conflict had erupted between the two of them, escalating to the extent that they were now locked in battle. Only the elves in front of the Krall family's castle knew what was going on. After killing Schubert, Irina didn't back down against Helena's interrogation. Instead, she issued a challenge. Mistress Helena was second in power only to the Queen herself. She had already become a great magic caster 500 years ago, and she had turned the tides of several major battles during the war among species. In contrast, Princess Irina had traveled across the entire Norland continent, creating many legends in the process. She hadn't even reached 30 years of age yet, but she was already one of the most powerful great magic casters on the continent. At present, there was a beam of green light injecting itself into her body, bestowing her with additional power and vitality. This was a clash between star magic and holy light magic, a confrontation between light and darkness. Both sides displayed incredible power, and even the members of the Krall family had all fallen silent. Everyone looked on with bated breath, awaiting the commencement of this epic battle. No one could predict the result, and no one dared to imagine what kind of bearing the result of the battle would have on the entire Elven race. Now's not the time for infighting. Our enemies have had their eyes on our Wind Forest for a long time, and this land will be ravaged by war again if they take this opportunity to invade. A gentle voice drifted through the air. The darkness in the sky dissipated, revealing the sun once again. At the same time, the green strand of light was severed, and the dazzling light emanating from the Tree of Life also vanished. In the air above the Krall family's castle, a silver-haired elf in a set of golden robes appeared. She wore a golden crown with a blue gemstone at its center, and was extremely beautiful. It was impossible to tell her age with a look, as she had the purity of a 12 or 13-year-old, the youthful energy of a 17 or 18-year-old, the mature allure of a 30-year-old young woman, and also the gentle air of a 40-year-old woman. Everyone was struck by a different feeling as they set their eyes on her, but there was a universal sense of holiness that cleansed everyone's hearts. Soft golden light enshrouded her entire body, and she wore a gentle sympathetic smile on her face. Her blue eyes were clear and bright as if she could see through all things in this world. "Your Majesty!" All of the elves half knelt to the ground in a respectful manner. Even from afar, where the elves could only hear the Elven Queen's voice but not see her, they still half knelt on the ground in the direction of the Krall family estate as a sign of reverence. "Your Majesty!" Irina stowed away her staff and bowed her head. "Your Majesty!" Helena hesitated momentarily, but she also put away her wand in the end as she bowed to the Queen. The Elven Queen nodded and raised a hand, upon which an invisible burst of gentle power helped all of the kneeling elves to their feet. Her gentle touch was felt throughout the entire Wind Forest, evoking a sense of warmth in everyone's hearts. "Your Majesty, Princess Irina killed family leader Schubert for no good reason, please uphold justice for our Krall family." Schubert's brother stepped forward and fell to his knees again. He looked up at the Elven Queen with a grief-stricken expression, with Schubert's lifeless body right next to him. "Please uphold justice for us, Your Majesty." All of the Krall family members also fell to their knees again with sorrow etched on their faces. The Elven Queen took a sympathetic glance at Schubert's body. She gently raised a finger and a beam of green light fell upon him. The blood on his body and the ground disappeared, and his head was also restored to its normal state. However, he was still dead. Even the Elven Queen couldn't revive someone already dead. "Irina, why did you kill him?" The Elven Queen's voice was still quite gentle, but there was a hint of interrogation in her eyes. "He deserved to die. You know I would never kill a good person." Irina looked into the Elven Queen's eyes with an earnest and stubborn expression. The Elven Queen's expression stirred slightly upon hearing that, and she fell silent. What gives you the right to say that? Schubert has contributed greatly to our elven race, and dedicated his entire life to creating a better world for his brethren. Princess Irina, you have to provide a more detailed explanation rather than just a subjective opinion. Even as the princess, you can't kill our officials without any good reason. Helena turned to Irina with eyes as sharp as those of a falcon. You want an explanation? Sure, I'll give you one. Irina looked back at her with a mocking smile. She pointed at the sniveling elven servants, and said, during the years in which Schubert has been in power, he has set up all types of strict laws and implemented countless cruel torture methods. He forcibly introduced a hierarchy system, and released the so-called elven laws. The free fairies were somehow reduced to slaves for the major families. They've been forced to do manual labor against their will, they've been stripped of their freedom, and they've had to serve others, only for their dignity to be stomped into the ground in return. They live lives that are more painful than death, but they have no choice, as the slightest hint of resistance shown will result in them being locked up and tortured. Schubert was also one of the main advocates for the elven laws, and in the past few years, he has changed those laws as he saw fit. Those aren't laws, they're just rules invented to benefit him so he can control other elves more easily. Countless elves have struggled amid crushing despair and lost their lives in attempts to resist this oppressive system. If all lives are meant to be equal, then what gives the elves from the major families the right to kill other elves without any consequence? Should they not be killed for those crimes? Irina looked at Helena with a sneer on her face as she continued, what's the point of having a system of laws like this? Are you allowed to do whatever you want just because the weaker elves can't resist? Even the humans of Rodu aren't as filthy as all of you. That's why I killed him. He deprived countless elves of their freedom, and killed countless more innocent elves. For those crimes, he deserved to die. Irina raised her voice as a vehement look appeared in her eyes, and she said, Helena, do you know how many elves left the Wind Forest after you forcibly implemented your new social system? Over 20% of our population was forced out of their homes. They are elves, and elves are meant to be free. You're constantly preaching about the despicable nature of humans, yet you're nothing but a human in elven skin. The Kral family members hung their heads upon hearing that, while some of the enslaved elves began to sob. The sobs seemed to be contagious, and soon, all of the elven servants had broken down into tears. The elven race is becoming more powerful, so this is clearly a correct strategy. The elven race has never been this unified in its history, and in the future, we will continue to become more powerful. We will be able to defeat all enemies and guard our Wind Forest. Helena wasn't backing down in the slightest as she said, this is a revolution that will take the elven race to greater heights. Collateral damage and sacrifices will be inevitable during this process, but it's all worth it for the greater good of the entire elven race. Revolution? What a load of bullshit! Irina couldn't help but burst into laughter at the absurdity of what she was hearing. She pointed at the enslaved elves, and asked, have you asked them whether they were willing to be a part of your so-called revolution? Are they willing to become sacrifices for you? If scum like you can become more powerful just from enslaving others, then what's the point of hard work? Thud. The elven servants all fell to their knees, and many more elves emerged from the castle before also kneeling on the ground. Your Majesty, please save your people from this never-ending torture. We believe in the God of life and treat even flowers and plants as our equals, but we're being oppressed by our own brethren and even resistance is illegal. We would rather be banished from the Wind Forest than live in such humiliating conditions, the leader of the dancers spoke on behalf of all of the servants. Your Majesty, please banish us from the Wind Forest. All of the elves yelled amid broken sobs. All of them wore grief-stricken expressions, and many of them had visible wounds on their bodies. The God of life will bless all of you. From this day forth, you are free once again to return to your homes. It is your choice whether you would like to stay in the Wind Forest or leave. The Elven Queen's eyes were filled with pity and sympathy. She waved a hand through the air, and spots of green light fell from the sky, instantly healing all of the elves' injuries. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Thank you, Your Highness." All of the elves turned to the Elven Queen and Irina with excitement and gratitude on their faces. Irina's expression also softened a little. "Your Majesty," Helena still wanted to offer some objections. However, the Elven Queen raised a hand to cut her off as she continued, "From this day forth, the hierarchical system proposed in the Elven laws will be abolished. All elves that were forced into slavery must be freed and may choose where they would like to go. That's an order." The Kral family members and guests were all stunned to hear this. "Yes." Meanwhile, all of the enslaved elves were overjoyed. With an order from the Queen, they would be able to stay in the Wind Forest without any fear of being enslaved ever again. "Your Majesty, that order absolutely cannot be passed down. If we implement this, the entire elven race will fall apart," Helena said in an urgent voice. "Irina's right. Without freedom, an elf is no longer an elf." The Elven Queen looked into Helena's eyes, and asked, "Helena, we want the entire race on our side, not just to keep a few powerful people happy. If our power and prosperity is forged on the basis of inflicting pain upon our brethren, then what's the point? In exchange for power to better our race, we're sacrificing the very things that we're trying to protect. Shouldn't our objective be to protect our brethren rather than to hurt them?" Helena looked at the Queen, and slowly lowered her head as she fell silent. "Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com." The Elven Queen turned to Irina, and said, "Princess Irina, you killed Schubert without conducting a trial or investigation first, so you'll be locked away in detention for a year, and you'll be stripped of the right to inherit the throne as your punishment." "I accept that." Irina nodded in response. She took a glance at the freed elves, and a smile appeared on her face as she turned to depart. "Thank you, Your Highness." The leader of the dancers stepped forward to express her gratitude. "Thank you." All of the other elves also nodded as they looked at Irina with concern on their faces. Elves always look better when they're smiling rather than crying. "All of you look really ugly right now." Irina turned to everyone with a gorgeous smile on her face. Her smile seemed to be contagious, and smiles also appeared on the faces of all of the freed elves. "Farewell." Irina turned as she waved farewell to everyone. "Irina, you still haven't told me why you killed Schubert." The Elven Queen transmitted her voice to Irina. Irina's footsteps faltered momentarily before she continued onward. She also transmitted her voice in response as she said, "If I were forcibly taken away from you as a newborn and someone planned to kill me, would you kill them?" "I would." The Elven Queen's response was very quick and decisive. 3 years ago, I didn't know who had done that, but now I do, so I killed him." A smile appeared on Irina's face, and she disappeared from view in the blink of an eye. "You're all free now." The Elven Princess raised a hand to help all of the freed elven slaves to their feet before also disappearing amid a flash of golden light. "We can go home now. We're finally free." The elves all yelled with elation. The Queen's order was soon heard by everyone in the Wind Forest, creating a massive stir in the process. Irina returned to the cave, and she turned to SAHDR as she instructed coldly, "Draft me a list of people from the Magus Tower and our elven race who were potentially involved in that incident 3 years ago. I'm going to make sure that those people live in constant fear until I decide to reap their lives." "Yes." SAHDR nodded before quickly getting to work. "Is Master Schubert really dead?" Ferris glanced in the direction of the Kral family and stuck out her dainty little tongue before also entering the cave. "How does a man take so long to get changed? It's been an hour, and he still hasn't come out." Ingwe sighed as he stood in front of the elven embassy. He took a glance at an extremely beautiful female elf who had appeared beside him before looking away. She was most likely here to run an errand in the elven embassy. "Tisk, it's almost lunchtime, and he still hasn't come out. The line at the restaurant is really long." 10 minutes later, Ingwe took a glance at time, and in doing so, he discovered that the same female elf was still standing next to him and was looking directly at him. Which family is she from? I haven't seen her before, so she most likely isn't from the Baybilly family. Ingwu narrowed his eyes as he appraised the woman beside him. She had golden hair with green eyes and a set of extremely beautiful regal facial features. Her skin was fair and delicate, and her figure was extremely tall and slender, but her chest and backside were very voluptuous. This young master sure is unreliable. Another 10 minutes passed, and Ingwu sighed once again. The young master had most likely changed into his pajamas and fallen asleep again. With that in mind, Ingwu turned and prepared to knock on his door again. Are you blind? I've been standing here the entire time. A lazy voice suddenly sounded beside Ingwu, and he almost **t himself. Ingwu stared at the female elf for a long time. Regardless of whether it was her beautiful features or her seductive figure, all of it was brimming with feminine charm. Her emerald eyes shimmered with a seductive light, and her blue dress hugged her voluptuous figure to perfection. Even as an old man who had lost interest in women several centuries ago, Ingwu's eyes still lit up at the sight of such an exquisite beauty. However, he almost collapsed from horror after hearing her voice. Young master. Ingwu stared at the female elf with a twisted and uncertain expression. That voice just then belonged to Blower. Were you surprised? Ha ha ha. The female elf had been trying to maintain a regal and cultured facade this entire time, but she suddenly burst into laughter as she looked at Ingwu. Even so, she was still covering her mouth as she laughed with her feminine charm on full display. It created quite a harrowing sight as the sound of the laughter was not something that should be coming out of a beautiful female elf's mouth. What are you doing, young master? How could you dress like this? It's preposterous. Ingwu was trembling with rage. The third young master of the Baybilly family was cross-dressing in public. If word of this were to spread, his father would die from rage. Didn't you tell me to disguise myself so the young mistress of the Brewster family won't recognize me? Blower gave him a dainty smile as he replied, the best disguise in the world is to cross-dress. There's no way that young Mistress Sally will be able to identify me as the third young master of the Baybilly family now. She'll probably think that you're the third young mistress of the Baybilly family. Ingwu rolled his eyes, and he felt as if he were about to black out. He shook his head, and said, go back and change. That get-up is way too ostentatious. You're going to attract too much attention, and your voice is really off as well. You'll have to speak if you want to get close to young Mistress Sally, right? Do you think I'm beautiful as well? I just had a look in the mirror, and I almost swooned at the sight of myself. As expected, I'm the most beautiful person in this world aside from Princess Irina. Blower stroked his delicate chin with a dreamy expression. He then turned to Ingwu with a smile, and said, as for the voice, you don't have to worry about it. For a genius like me, feigning a female voice is a piece of cake. Just call me Shirley from now on. Shirley. Ingwu's eyes widened as he stared at Blower, who had switched to a gentle female voice without any warning. Additionally, the voice was gentle yet decisive and clean, not the sweet and mellow type, and it fitted her image perfectly. Let's go. Didn't you say that the restaurant is about to close? If we're late, the entire hour of effort I spent would go to waste. Blower was already stepping onto the horse-drawn carriage outside. But. Young Moss, Shirley, wait, let's discuss this first. Ingwu felt as if the values that he had forged in the past 6 or 7 centuries of his life had been completely flipped on their head. Young master, I have a very serious question for you, and I hope you can give me an honest reply. As they sat down in the horse-drawn carriage, Ingwu turned to Blower with a slightly grave expression. Go on. Blower nodded. Ingwu hesitated momentarily before asking, have you been planning to cross-dress ever since you came here? Could it be that you like dressing up as a woman? Or could it be, you like men? That's 3 questions. Blower pursed his lips. Please give me an honest reply. Ing was not to be deterred. I'm making a huge sacrifice for the success of your plan, you should be really touched, not skeptical of my sexual orientation. Blower shook his head in a graceful manner as he said, besides, do you think there's someone in this world worthy of being my spouse? As a man, no other man in this world is more handsome than me. As a woman, all other women under the heavens pale in comparison to my beauty. Being too beautiful is actually very vexing sometimes. I'm destined to be forever alone in this lifetime. There is no woman worthy of me, nor any man that can catch me. Ing looked at the disconsolate Blower, and was really struggling to stop himself from slapping Blower in the face. However, his narcissism was a good thing in a way. At the very least, he most likely wouldn't be into men. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. As long as that was the case, it was possible for a relationship to blossom between him and young Mistress Sally. If he really liked men, then there would be no hope at all. By the way, young master, what are you using as fake breasts? Are they cushions? Cushions? TCH, how could I possibly use something so crude? I found a type of tree in the wind forest which produces white sap once you slice into the bark. After refining that sap, it becomes a solid substance with great elasticity. So you prepared that back in the wind forest and brought it all the way to Chaos City. I was just preparing for all possible scenarios. A successful person must be well equipped to face anything at any time. Does a successful person need to cross-dress? You see, this is why I'm more successful than normal people. I can withstand humiliation that other people cannot. If this is humiliating to you, then, why do you look so excited? Thus, their strange conversation lasted the entire trip. Ing slowly grew accustomed to the fact that Blower was a seasoned veteran in cross-dressing, and he simply closed his eyes so he wouldn't be inclined to fly into a violent rage at the sight of her. In contrast, Blower wore a calm and collected expression, and he was a picture of confidence. He was not uncomfortable in the slightest after cross-dressing, as if this was how he always dressed. The horse-drawn carriage stopped, and Ing opened his eyes before pointing to the Mamie restaurant as he said, "That's the restaurant right there. Young Mistress Sally works here, so you can try to approach her. However, I suggest you don't get too close to her today. Otherwise, revealing your true gender and identity to her in the future could prove to be an issue. Don't worry, this will be a piece of cake." Blower got down from the carriage with a confident expression. He surveyed the long line in front of the restaurant with furrowed brows as he murmured to himself, "Why is there such a long line? This must be quite an extraordinary restaurant to be so popular despite its terrible location." After a moment of hesitation, Blower made her way over to one of the lines. Her slender waist swayed from side to side, drawing a lot of attention from the customers. "Wow, that girl sure is beautiful." Mag just so happened to open the restaurant door at that moment, and his eyes lit up slightly at the sight of Blower at the end of the line. This elf's figure, looks, and disposition are all top-notch. Sally gives off a rather cold air, while she gives off an air of confidence to the extent of haughtiness, but that kind of attitude is perfectly justified by her beauty. She's a 9.2. She's still a little off compared to Gloria. Mag gave an internal evaluation as he looked at Blower. As for why her score was lower than Gloria's, that was because he preferred the more gentle and petite type. This woman was slightly too tall and slender for his tastes. If she were an earthling, she could easily become a supermodel. Of course, he only looked at other women as if he were surveying works of art. There was only a polite appreciation for beauty rather than lust or an urge for conquest. Mag's heart was as still as water, but the same could not be said about the customers in the lines. Many men began to steal furtive glances at her while comparing her to Sally in their hearts. In contrast with the cold and aloof Sally, this woman appeared to be more approachable. "Hello there, beautiful elf, is this your first time here at Mamie Restaurant?" A young man in a set of lavish robes at the back of the line turned to Blower with a warm smile. However, his eyes were already sneaking down surreptitiously toward the section of Blower's legs revealed beneath the dress. Hat, men. Blower rolled his eyes internally, but he didn't let his exasperation show on his face. It was a good idea to ask him about the restaurant, then give a slightly indifferent nod. In doing so, she would be expressing some interest, but not a whole lot, and that was the best way to attract a man. My name is Constantine. I own 2 sizable gemstone shops in the Aden Square. My shops are quite close to Mamie restaurant, so I'm a regular customer here. Constantine nonchalantly flaunted his wealth before continuing, you sure have a good eye for delicious cuisine. This restaurant has the most delicious food in the entire Aden Square. In fact, I dare say there is no better restaurant in Chaos City or even the entire Norland continent. Boss Mag is an absolute genius. Is he really that impressive? Blower wasn't very interested in his so-called gemstone shops, but he was quite intrigued by his glowing commendation of the restaurant. He wasn't really looking forward to tasting any human food, but if the restaurant could serve up some decent cuisine for him to sample, then at least it wouldn't be a waste of a trip. I wouldn't lie to a beauty like you. Look at these lines. A normal restaurant would only have 1 line, right? There have been 2 lines at this restaurant every day ever since the owner released the tofu pudding dish. Due to the conflict between the sweet and savory tofu pudding factions, the customers split up into 2 lines. Our line is the sweet faction, while their line is the savory faction. You have to taste the sweet tofu pudding for yourself. Not only is it delicious, it also has really good cosmetic benefits. Blower was more than happy to provide a detailed introduction to the restaurant. Don't listen to him. Savory tofu pudding is the best. If you don't eat savory tofu pudding, then you might as well not eat tofu pudding, and if you don't eat tofu pudding, what's the point in living? An elderly man from the other line immediately stated his objections. Their exchange immediately made the atmosphere between the 2 factions a lot tenser. However, the customers in front of them were too busy rushing into the restaurant, so the conflict didn't escalate. Still, the contest between the 2 factions had successfully piqued Blower's interest. Interesting. What is this tofu pudding? If it really does have cosmetic benefits, then it's certainly worth a try. But then again, when you're beautiful to the extreme like I am, these exogenous substances have almost no effect. Blower was quite intrigued. In order to maintain his image as a warm and caring gentleman, Constantine didn't engage in a war of words with the elderly man from the savory faction. He turned to Blower with a smile, and said, "Beautiful lady, may I ask your name? And would you be so kind as to have lunch with me? Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. It's Shirley, and I'll skip on the lunch offer. I can afford my own meal." Blower whipped her golden curls in a haughty manner before brushing past Constantine as she strode into the restaurant. Is this love at first sight? My heart hasn't thumped like this for so many years. I thought there were no women in this world who could move me like this, but now I know that. I just haven't met the right one yet. Constantine felt as if his soul had escaped from his body as his heart fluttered like the wings of a hummingbird. Even his breathing had accelerated, and he quickly rushed in after her. Even though he had been rejected, he still felt the need to leave a good impression of himself in her heart. He just had to find an opportunity to sit next to her, then pay her bill in her stead, and she would surely feel obligated to speak with him further. "Welcome." Yabimiya smiled as she greeted the customers. Meanwhile, Sally stood on the other side of the door with her usual aloof expression, while Mag entered the kitchen to prepare for the lunch rush. Yabimiya immediately spotted the tall and slender Blower, and her eyes lit up as she turned to Sally. "What a beautiful elf! Aisha, do you know her? I've never seen her before." Sally had also noticed Blower, but she had no recollection of such a person. However, after the war among species, many elves had left the Wind Forest to go elsewhere on the continent. This elven beauty was most likely one of them. What a beautiful big sister! Amy was also looking at Blower with sparkling eyes. The omniscient door displayed the information about all of the restaurant's customers in Mag's mind, including their portrait, name, species, gender, power level. Everything was revealed to him. Mag only took cursory glances at the screen in his mind, but with his superb memory, he was able to easily remember all of the information. As such, he wouldn't have to rely on the omniscient door to identify his customers. Looks like there aren't that many powerful beings among them. Mag heaved an internal sigh. Customers at the 5th tier or above were quite rare, and there were almost none of the 7th rank or above. As for 10th tier powerhouses, to this day, Mag had only seen 4, Krasu, Urian, Novan, and Michael. Just as Mag walked into the kitchen, the portrait and information of an elf suddenly appeared in his mind. It was the elf that he had given a score of 9.2 points to. He took a glance at her information, upon which his body immediately stiffened. Holy FCK, holy FCK, holy F***CK. He's a F***ing man? System, what the F***CK is wrong with your door? Chapter 481 Blower, Shirley, Elf, Male, 25 years old, 7th tier magic caster. The information on the screen was quite brief, but the male gender assessment made Mag immediately do a double take. Please don't doubt the professionalism of the system. The omniscient door is the newest technological masterpiece created by the system. It is connected to the information network of the entire Norland continent, thereby allowing it to accurately identify each and every customer that enters the restaurant. The system gave a serious reply. It then continued, but if you still doubt the results yielded by the door, then you can request for a manual check, and the system will verify the subject's identity again. Alright, go ahead. Mag was not convinced. He had seen countless women in his 2 lifetimes, so how could he possibly mistake a man for a woman? Ding! Verification complete, Blower, Shirley, Elf, Male, 25 years old, 7th tier magic caster. Ding! The manual check incurs a fee of 1 gold coin, which has been successfully deducted. Please use the manual checking service again soon. What? You charge for this? Why didn't you say so earlier? Mag raised an eyebrow in surprise. You never asked. Why would I offer a free service like this? The system replied innocently as an infuriating emoji of a large resigned expression with hands splayed open hovered through his mind. There are even free customer service hotlines, so why can't you offer free service here? Also, don't send me emojis. Mag rolled his eyes. The system was getting more and more absurd. Please don't compare me to those unintelligent customer service hotlines. They will fail to answer 80% of questions posed to them, whereas I have only ever been reported by one person. The system gave a stern response. And I'm the only person with access to you, so you're getting reported by 100% of your customers. A peculiar expression appeared on Mag's face as he continued, by the way, why is the information the same as last time? You didn't just copy and paste the earlier results, did you? Please don't insult the system with such scathing queries, the system will never do something like that. A stern angry emoji hovered through Mag's mind as it continued. These are the results derived from a second scan conducted by the omniscient door. This is the so-called manual service that cost me a gold coin? This is fraud. It should be illegal. The omniscient door is my property, and if there's something wrong with it, what's the point in having it run another scan? Mag was a little angry. He was wondering where the system had gotten those emojis from. Of course there's a purpose in running another check. Normally, the omniscient door's scanning process is automatic, whereas I had to run a manual check just then. That's premium service. Just accept the reality, this is a male elf. This is why the omniscient door is so useful, it can prevent you from falling in love with the wrong person. The system's voice was tinged with a hint of mockery. So this must be a legendary ladyboy. How terrifying! Mag turned to glance at Blower, who was standing in the line like a proud swan, and he shuddered as he accepted the system's verdict. "Are you interested?" the system asked. "There's no way I'd be interested in another man." Mag immediately stated his rejection before falling deep into thought. A 7th-tier elven cross-dressing magic caster. Could it be that he's here for Sally? He was aware of Sally's identity, and he knew that people from the elven race were looking for her. As such, Mag immediately thought of Sally upon seeing this suspicious ladyboy. During their time working together, Mag had been very satisfied with Sally. She was a woman of few words, but she always did her job to an impeccable standard. The success of the restaurant was inseparable from her hard work. Of course, Mag had to admit that employing a 7th-tier elven magic caster as a waitress was an extreme overkill, especially when she was someone who could potentially become the elven princess and inherit the throne in the future. However, Mag had always been of the belief that Sally should have the choice to stay or leave. If she wanted to stay, then Mag certainly wasn't going to chase her away, and he would try to make sure that no one could take her away against her will. Mag set aside this train of thought for now. If this Blower really was here for Sally, then he would inevitably make his move sooner or later. He would just have to see what Blower wanted to do and react accordingly. The decor in this restaurant isn't bad, but there are too many people dining at once, and there are beings from all types of species here. Am I expected to dine at the same table with a demon? Blower looked around the restaurant, and found that the decor was quite sophisticated and refined. The wooden tables and chairs were very comforting, and to his surprise, the wood patterns on those tables and chairs were all very similar, thereby suggesting that they had been cut from the same tree. Normal people wouldn't be able to notice this detail, but it was a testament to the owner's efforts. Constantine was still standing behind Blower, striking up a conversation from time to time. He was acting in a very warm and enthusiastic manner, and he was racking his brains for a way to gain Blower's favor. He was a renowned single tycoon of Chaos City, and he hadn't been this interested in a woman for many years. Blower only occasionally responded to Constantine's approaches in a nonchalant manner. He wasn't interested in a man who was so blatantly trying to get him into bed. "Big sister, you're so beautiful." Amy made her way toward Blower with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Not only was she beautiful, she was also quite tall, almost as tall as Mag. Ugly Duckling also looked up at Blower and blinked with a hint of confusion in its eyes. "What an adorable little half-elf girl." Blower looked down at Amy and her eyes immediately lit up. She had an intricate little face with pointy little ears that were semi-transparent like cicada wings. Her long silver hair had been tied into twin ponytails, and her blue eyes were large and bright. She was so adorable that Blower was struck by an almost uncontrollable urge to hold her. Silver hair, blue eyes, and that gorgeous little face, she looks so much like a young Princess Irina. She's so cute that it's illegal. Blower had only ever conceded to Princess Irina in the looks department, but it appeared that this little girl would be extending that list. "You're very adorable as well, little girl. What's your name?" Blower looked down at Amy with a gentle smile. "I'm Amy." An elated smile appeared on Amy's face. Receiving a compliment from such a beautiful big sister was very pleasing for her. "Amy? That's a very good name. You can call me Big Sister Shirley." Blower nodded with a smile. He took a glance at the human in the kitchen, and wondered which beautiful elf maiden he had swindled into having such a super adorable half-elf daughter with him. As expected, good-looking humans really were the bane to all elves. Sally, young mistress of the Brewster family, 24 years of age, 7th-tier magic caster. Her looks are passable. Of course, she's still lacking a bit compared to me. After Amy left with Ugly Duckling in her arms, Blower began to surreptitiously assess Sally. He had read many files on Sally, all of which had been thrust upon him by Ingwu. The files were so detailed that they contained information on the time when 7-year-old Sally had fallen into a lake when fishing with Princess Irina. It appeared that the Baybilly family had expended a lot of effort to get their hands on this information. "I'm not here to get into a relationship. Life is so short already," I can't be wasting time on relationships. I have to dedicate myself to freeing the entire elven race. Blower looked at Sally with a smile as the thought to himself, I wonder what Ing will think if he knew that I was here to recruit Sally for my cause. After a long wait, an open seat was finally made available for Blower. However, he hesitated momentarily at the sight of the three sinister-looking demons at the same table. Let's wait for a while longer, Madam Shirley. I'm sure 2 seats will open up soon. Constantine immediately cut in at the sight of the 3 demons. He didn't want to see such a beautiful maiden dining with 3 sinister demons. Furthermore, the demons had just sat down, and had yet to place their orders. If Blower were to sit there, then he wouldn't have a chance to dine with her at the same table. Yabimiya could also see the hesitation on Blower's face. It was normal for women to have second thoughts like this, so she offered a comforting smile as she said, "You can wait a while longer for a new seat to open up." "No need, I'll sit there." Blower strode straight toward the 3 demons and sat down at the same table as them. Constantine opened his mouth to voice his objection, but he could only heave a resigned sigh inside as Blower had already settled into his seat. This was the first time that he had been rejected by a woman, and the feeling of loss was quite a bitter one. Madam Shirley must be trying to test me. I can't just give up like this. The fire soon reignited in Constantine's belly, and he quickly strode over to an empty seat at Blower's table before sitting down. The 3 demons turned to look at Blower in unison. They wore suits of tattered black armor over their burly bodies and put on a menacing display. In response, Blower looked back at them with a calm expression and no fear whatsoever. The 3 demons looked away with slightly disappointed expressions. One of them raised a hand, and said, "I want 3 rigiamos and 1 braised chicken and rice." "I'll have the same," the other 2 demons chimed in at the same time immediately. "Sure, please wait a moment." Yabimiya nodded with a smile before turning to Blower. "What would you like?" "I'll have a look at the menu first." Blower nodded in response. He had a good first impression of this half-dragon girl with a bubbly smile, but he was super picky with his food, so he had to choose carefully. Men also needed to take care of themselves. Otherwise, their beauty would fade over time. One of the most important things to Blower was to maintain his figure, so he paid a lot of attention to his daily caloric and macronutrient intake. Even when eating rice, he had to measure it down to the very last grain, and refused to eat even 1 grain more than his daily allotment. "I heard that human food is quite greasy, so it looks like I'll just have to order something as a token, then eat again when I get back." Blower was quite skeptical as he opened the menu, but his eyes immediately lit up at the sight of the dishes within. All of the dishes on the menu had accompanying images, which were all extremely lifelike, as if they were the actual thing. What was even more surprising to him was that even though it was his first time seeing those dishes, he was still salivating involuntarily. The rainbow-like Yangzhou fried rice, the braised chicken covered in rich savory juices, the soft and white tofu pudding. All of the dishes looked extremely alluring. All types of delectable aromas wafted through the air. Blower had only had 2 little fruits for breakfast in the morning, and he suddenly felt as if his stomach were rumbling as he looked at those images. No. No. I can't lose myself just over a few images. Perhaps the actual dishes won't look anything like the images. Besides, human food definitely won't taste good to us elves. Blower was still trying to resist with all his might. He raised a hand with a smile on his face, and said to the approaching Yabimiya, "Which dish would be the most suitable for elves?" "I like dishes that are a bit more plain and not as intense in flavor. All of our dishes are very delicious, but if you are looking for one that doesn't have a very strong flavor, then I'd recommend the Yangzhou fried rice or braised chicken and rice for the main dish, and tofu pudding or ice cream for dessert. Those are all dishes with more subtle flavors." Yabimiya was giving an introduction based on what Sally's favorite dishes were. "Then I'll get a Yangzhou fried rice." Blower contemplated momentarily before making up his mind. The braised chicken and rice looked a little greasy. "Big Sister Shirley, the rainbow fried rice is super delicious. Just one serving won't be enough. Amy made her way over to Blower's table again, and was looking up at him with an earnest expression. I don't have a very big appetite, so I doubt I'll even be able to finish one serving. Blower shook his head in response. Looking at the portion size in the image, he estimated that he could only eat about half a portion. Even one extra grain of rice would be unacceptable. Really? I've never seen a customer not finish the dish. Amy looked up at Blower with skepticism written all over her little face. Just you watch, little Amy, I definitely won't finish the dish. If I do, I'll get fat, and that's unacceptable. Blower made a solemn promise to Amy. He had to show this little girl his conviction and determination. He was not going to let some human food derail his dreams and pursuits. All right, I'll be watching, then. I'm sure you'll definitely finish the entire dish. Amy nodded with an adamant expression. She was super confident in her father's food. One Yangzhou fried rice, coming right up. Yabimiya nodded before turning toward the kitchen. Blower looked around him and was slightly surprised to find that the restaurant was quite peaceful. He had thought that in a restaurant with so many customers hailing from diverse backgrounds, there would be frequent banter and altercations. However, the situation was the exact opposite of his expectations. All of the customers were focused on enjoying their meals, and even those who were familiar with each other were speaking in hushed tones. No one was raising their voice, and there certainly weren't any altercations. As for the three demons sitting at the same table as him, they were discussing in whispers where they were going to take their midday nap. It was the first time that Blower had ever seen demons speak in such quiet voices. Here's your Yangzhou fried rice, enjoy. Yabimiya placed a Yangzhou fried rice in front of Blower with a smile on her face. Base. The aroma of eggs coupled with chopped green onions wafted toward Blower. All of the ingredients had been evenly diced to match the size of the grains of rice, and they were distributed evenly throughout the plate. It was as if a rainbow had been torn down from the sky and chopped up into pieces before being served in this dish. The colors were vibrant and refreshing, and the grains of rice glistened like stars under the light of the chandelier overhead. What a pretty dish! Blower's eyes lit up at the sight of the Yangzhou fried rice. The colors were exuberant, the ingredients were diced to perfection, and the grains of rice were like an intricate work of art. This aroma is way too alluring as well. The scent of the egg is so rich, while the smell of the green onions provides a refreshing element. Its tender green color is just like that of the seedlings in the wind forest. Aside from that, there are prawns, winter bamboo shoots, and many other types of ingredients. It's packed with nutrients, but isn't very greasy. It's a perfect dish. Blower's eyes were practically glowing, and before he knew it, he had already picked up his spoon. The three demos on his table all turned to look at him with curiosity in their eyes as if they were wondering whether he would be able to deliver on his promise to Amy. Constantine was also looking at him. Of course, he was more concerned about whether Blower was going to be bullied by the three demons, and he was preparing to step in at any moment to save the damsel in distress. Amy was also part of the audience as she stood beside the table with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She was also looking up at Blower with curiosity in her eyes, clearly waiting for her to taste her first spoonful of fried rice. No. I must control myself. A half portion of this fried rice dish is perfect to last me until this afternoon. I can't eat even a single grain of rice over my planned allotment. Blower had also noticed everyone scrutinizing him, and he was determined to live up to his word. Thus, he took a deep breath and ate his first spoonful of fried rice. Oh! This flavor! Blower's eyes widened with incredulity. The rice and egg practically melted as soon as they entered his mouth, while the winter bamboo shoot and green peas presented crunchy and refreshing textures. The rice enveloped in egg was extremely delicious, and there were undertones of bacon and prawn as well. It was amazing to think that all of those flavors could be present in just a single mouthful of fried rice. The delicious flavors danced on the tip of his tongue, and he felt as if his taste buds were like flowers blooming in the spring rain. Blower felt as if he had returned to his childhood. Back then, he would often climb onto a tree to spy on the princess, whose entire body radiated dazzling light. She was always playing with a group of little elves in the wind forest. He wanted to join in, but he was too shy to approach them, so he could only look on from afar. It was a spring morning that day, and he had only just climbed onto his favorite tree before being kicked down to the ground. The one who had kicked him was none other than the princess that he had been spying on, and from that day onward, he also became one of her underlings. However, he was a little special in that he would only play with the princess in the morning when there was no third person around. Once other people began to turn up, he would retreat back onto his tree and look at them from his perch up above. For that reclusive nature, the princess had given him the nickname Tree Bear, as all bears lived alone. However, that was something that only he and the princess knew. In his eyes, the princess was a goddess who could not be soiled. He could only look at her from afar, and even that filled him with a profound sense of satisfaction. He swallowed his first mouthful of fried rice, and it flowed down his throat like a warm stream. He was immediately struck by a sense of warmth, and the fragrant flavor of the fried rice lingered in his mouth even after he had swallowed it. That's the taste of the spring of life. A hint of surprise flashed through Blower's eyes, but he soon realized that it was nothing to be alarmed about. 50 years ago, anyone caught selling the spring of life to the outside world would be strictly punished by the elven race. However, selling the spring of life had since become a way for many elven nobles to earn money quickly. As long as one had enough money, it wouldn't be strange for them to be able to purchase some spring of life in Chaos City. It was just surprising to him that someone would add the spring of life to fried rice. However, it was exactly because of this final ingredient that the fried rice seemed to be more complete, and he couldn't help but want to devour another spoonful. How could there be such delicious food in this world? The ingredients are so simple, but the flavor is absolutely amazing. I can't stop eating. Blower scooped another spoonful of fried rice into his mouth, and was treated to another intoxicating explosion of flavor. Compared to the sweet wild fruits from the wind forest, this fried rice was on a completely different level. It was as if the dish was imbued with mystical magic powers that prevented him from being able to put his spoon down. I can only eat half a bowl at most. I must strictly regulate every grain of rice that enters my body. I must only eat at caloric maintenance. I must live up to my word. All of those thoughts only flashed through his mind for a split second before being completely discarded. In that moment, the young Joe fried rice was the only thing in his eyes. Ding! That fried rice was delicious. The spoon created a crisp ringing sound as it struck the porcelain plate. Blower wore a content smile on his face as he praised the dish that he had just consumed. His expression then faltered slightly at the sight of the spotless plate in front of him, and he decided to lick his spoon for some reason. Everyone around him had fallen silent, and Blower's hand also stiffened with his spoon in his mouth. He looked at the three demons to find that they all wore surprised expression. He turned to the other side, only to find Constantine appraising him with a slightly peculiar look. Finally, he looked down at Amy to find that she was wearing a confident smile on her face as if everything had gone according to her plan. This. How did I end up finishing the dish? And I licked the spoon as well. Blower felt as if he were about to faint. He had made a solemn promise that he would only eat half a portion of fried rice, and not a single grain of rice over that quota. However, there wasn't even a single grain of rice left, and the plate had been licked spotlessly clean. Furthermore, he was struck by the urge to order another portion of fried rice. Blower's cheeks were a little flushed. He looked at the empty plate with a remorseful expression, and thought to himself, according to my calculations, this has already exceeded twice my required daily caloric intake. Also, due to the fact that I consumed the dish so quickly, it's very likely to result in indigestion. Big Sister Shirley, you ate the whole thing after all. Your body is much more honest than your mouth. As expected, no one can resist father's cooking. Amy looked up at Blower with a sweet smile before suggesting, would you like a tofu pudding or ice cream after your rainbow fried rice? They're also super delicious. The three demons sitting at the table all burst into laughter. They were curious to see whether there really was someone in this world who could resist Mag's cooking, but they had just verified that such a person didn't exist. After that, all three of them dug into their own rigiamos and braised chicken and rice. Yabimiya was also chuckling with her hand over her mouth. This elf sure was amusing. But then again, there really wasn't anyone who could resist Mag's food. No, there's too much sugar in dessert food which will make me gain weight, so I definitely won't have those. Blower shook his head with a decisive expression, but he felt as if his cheeks were burning as he sensed the amused smiles on everyone's faces. He looked at the empty plate in front of him, and he simply couldn't help but say to Yabimiya, please get me another Yongzhou fried rice, though. What a pity. I can only ask father to let me eat another ice cream then. Amy sighed before making her way over to the kitchen. I'll have another portion of fried rice, then cast some spells to burn off the excess calories. Blower had made up his mind. He had to have another portion of fried rice. He then turned to the kitchen with anticipation in his eyes, trying to see what treasures were hidden in there to produce such delicious dishes. Who is she? Is she really just an elf traveling outside the wind forest? Sally thought to herself while clearing a table. Among the beings wandering on the continent outside of their respective territories, the elves probably took up the largest proportion. Prior to the war among species, elves loved to roam the continent. Elves preferred a free and unrestrained lifestyle, so many of them were into traveling. However, as the elven hierarchy system was established, elves began to live in settlements like humans. What was undeniable was that since those settlements had been created, the elven race had indeed become more powerful. Elves were forced to train and battle together, thereby creating powerful elven armies in a short span of time. That was quite a force to be reckoned with to other races. During the earlier phases of the war among species, the elves had almost been chased out of the wind forest. The main reason for this was that most elves led nomadic lives, and weren't used to working together. As such, they were unable to formulate an effective resistance against opposing armies. There was a constant way up between power and freedom that plagued the elven race, and to this day, Sally still couldn't make up her mind on which she deemed to be more important. As such, she was very curious about the elves who lived outside of the wind forest. What kind of lives did they lead? Were they happier than the elves in the wind forest? Those questions were what led her to escape from the wind forest in the first place. Perhaps I can find an opportunity to talk to her, Sally thought to herself. She wanted to avoid the elves in the wind forest, but those outside the wind forest were subjects that she could approach. Father, can I have an ice cream? Just one will do. Amy's voice sounded from the entrance of the kitchen. Amy held Ugly Duckling in her arms with her chin resting on Ugly Duckling's little head. She was looking at Mag with a pitiable expression in her watery blue eyes, and her pointy little ears drooped as she pouted, putting on a display that said, "I'll cry if you don't give me ice cream." Ugly Duckling was also looking up at Mag with an innocent expression. They've learned to work together. Mag raised an eyebrow, and he felt as if his heart were about to melt. He wanted to give them everything they could possibly ask for. Even if they wanted the stars and moon in the sky, he would pluck those down for them. They were simply too adorable. Mag opened his mouth to agree, but he hesitated upon recalling the events from the night prior. Amy had eaten too much ice cream the day before, and even though Zixi had cured her, the ordeal had taught him a good lesson, which was that he couldn't spoil Amy and let have too much ice cream. You can have an ice cream cone, but if you eat too much, your tummy will hurt, so you're only going to get one ice cream per day from now on. Are you sure you want to eat your ice cream for today now? Mag asked with a smile. Just one a day. Amy's expression immediately fell as she begged, "Father, can I have one more a day? Just two a day is enough." No, Mag shook his head with a non-negotiable expression. Spoiling Amy excessively would only work to her detriment. Amy looked at Mag for a while, and after confirming that she wouldn't get a second ice cream, she heaved a resigned sigh and pouted as she said, "Just one ice cream a day, life is so hard." Mag almost burst into laughter upon hearing that. She was already learning the hardships of life, and it was all because of her one ice cream per day quota. Despite his amusement, he remained resolute, and said, "So, do you want to eat your ice cream for today now, Muse? I want a blueberry one." Amy immediately blurted out in response. Her eyes lit up once again, and her pointy little ears also rose up as she looked at Mag with an expectant gaze. All of the disappointment in her heart had been completely wiped away. "Blueberry? Sure, let me make a blueberry ice cream for my little baby." Mag smiled as he quickly made a blueberry ice cream and handed it to Amy. Meow. Ugly Duckling was placed on the ground by Amy, and it also looked up at Mag with an expectant gaze as it pointed at the ice cream machine with its paw. "You only get one ice cream a day as well. Otherwise, you're going to end up becoming a ball of ice cream, and you'll get eaten." Amy licked her ice cream as she looked down at Ugly Duckling with a serious expression. Meow. Ugly Duckling was a little dejected to hear that, but it still conceded in the end. Mag shook his head with a smile, but he agreed with Amy's sentiment. If Ugly Duckling were allowed to eat whatever it wanted, obesity would be inevitable. As such, portion control was mandatory. "So what flavor ice cream would you like today, Ugly Duckling?" Mag strode over to the ice cream machine and pointed at the mocha button, upon which Ugly Duckling shook its head. He then pointed to the vanilla and blueberry buttons, to which Ugly Duckling also shook its head. "So you want a chocolate one?" Mag asked. Meow. Ugly Duckling immediately nodded with elation. It began to skip around in the kitchen, wagging its tail with excitement. "Ugly Duckling, you have to remember that you're a duck, not a dog. You're not allowed to wag your tail like that," Amy scolded. Ugly Duckling immediately stopped wagging its tail, but it was still licking its lips with excitement at the sight of the chocolate ice cream in Mag's hands. "Go on." Mag smiled as he placed the ice cream on Ugly Duckling's little plate. "Big Sister Shirley, this is ice cream. It looks super delicious, doesn't it?" Amy held her ice cream carefully in her hands as she made her way over to Blower with a smile on her face. Blower looked at the ice cream in Amy's hand, only to see two blue balls stacked on top of each other. The color was very vibrant, and the surface of the balls was very smooth. It snowed every winter in the wind forest, so she wasn't intrigued by snowballs, but the snowballs in Amy's hands appeared to be a little different from normal snowballs. "What's a blueberry? Is that some kind of fruit? Will it really taste good to put stuff into snowballs?" Blower was quite curious, but he still shook his head, and said, "The snowballs have very interesting colors, but I don't want to eat them." "Really?" Amy was quite skeptical as she took a lick of her ice cream. The sweet and sour flavor melted in her mouth, and her face lit up with a blissful smile. Gulp. A collective gulping sound was suddenly heard throughout the entire restaurant. All of the customers in the general vicinity, including Blower, were salivating at the sight of Amy licking her ice cream. There was a popular saying among the customers of Mamie Restaurant, "Don't look at Amy as she's eating when you don't have money in your pocket, because you'll be compelled to have whatever she's having." "I'll get a blueberry ice cream. I only have 300 copper coins of spending money left for the month, but I really want to eat it. What do I do?" "Screw it, I'll get one as well." "No, I can't. If I order an ice cream, I'll only have 10 copper coins left." Some of the customers were struggling with internal conflict, while others were scrambling to order ice creams for themselves. Amy wasn't smug in the slightest after effecting a spike in ice cream sales, as she was too busy focusing on her own ice cream cone. There was a blissful smile of enjoyment on her little face as she slowly licked her ice cream, and just watching her eat evoked within the onlooker a sense of satisfaction. Furthermore, she was simply too adorable. What is that? How can she look so happy eating a snowball? It's as if she's eating the most delicious food in this world. Blower's eyes widened as he salivated involuntarily. He didn't think that he would develop an interest in those snowballs, but he was becoming more and more curious about its flavor. What kind of delicious food could put such a delighted expression on her face? Blower, surely, do you want to know what this ice cream tastes like? Amy suddenly looked up at Blower with a smile on her face. I do. Blower nodded unconsciously in response. Then let me find out for you. Amy took another lick of her ice cream, and said, it's sour, it's sweet, and it's super delicious. Amused laughter rang out among the nearby customers. They always found watching Amy converse with other customers very interesting. Blower was enraged by Amy's response, but he simply couldn't bring himself to vent his frustration on Amy at the sight of her smile. Furthermore, he felt as if he would be committing a crime if he didn't join in everyone's laughter. Should I try it? A voice sounded in Blower's heart, and it refused to go away. No. Those snowballs must be very sweet, and they don't look like ordinary snowballs, so I'll definitely get fat if I eat them. Blower shook his head to try and rid himself of that train of thought. However, his gaze then fell on Amy's ice cream again, and he couldn't help but gulp. She's so cute even when she's indecisive. Constantine stared at Blower with an entranced expression before calling Yabimiya over as he said, please get me 2 blueberry ice creams, one for Madame Shirley. Sure, please wait a moment. Yabimiya nodded in response. I don't really want one. Blower raised a hesitant hand. So just one ice cream then? Yabimiya stopped before turning to look at Blower and Constantine. Blower was starting to hesitate again. We'll get 2 ice creams, Constantine confirmed with a smile. He could tell that Blower still really wanted an ice cream. All right. Yabimiya nodded before turning away again. Change mine to a mocha flavor ice cream, Blower called after her. He then raised his hand to cover his face. How embarrassing he had gone back on his word twice in such a short span of time. It's all right, big sister Shirley. Even though going back on your word is really embarrassing, it's not like it's your first time, so you should be used to it by now. Amy looked up at Blower with a comforting expression. Are those supposed to be words of consolation? Blower buried his face even deeper into his hand. If it weren't for the fact that his young Joe fried rice and ice cream still hadn't arrived, he would have definitely rushed out of the restaurant already. It was simply too embarrassing for him to stay here. From this day forth, I'll never make any promises in this restaurant ever again, Blower vowed in his heart. He slowly calmed himself down and extricated his face from his hand as he resumed a calm and collected expression. How could a creature of such stunning beauty like him be defeated by such a small hurdle? Embarrassment? What was that? Big sister Shirley, how many ice creams are you planning on eating? Amy asked. Blower raised an eyebrow in response. She suddenly felt as if this little girl was just as difficult to deal with as the princess back when she was a little girl. In particular, the smile on her face really reminded her of the mischievous smile on the princess's face after she pulled off one of her pranks. Impossible, there's no way that the princess would have a daughter, as no one in this world is worthy of her. The thought only briefly flashed through Blower's mind before it was banished. There was perhaps someone like that 3 years ago, but he's no longer here in this world. That depends on my mood. Blower had learned to be smarter with his response this time. Amy wore an earnest and heartfelt expression as she said, then you have to control your mood. Otherwise, you'll really get fat if you eat too many. Blower opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. This little girl's words were so scathing, but she clearly had no malicious intent, and she was so adorable that no one could get mad at her. Sally isn't really familiar with the internal affairs of the elven race, and she hasn't seen the elven princess at all in the past 3 years. If this guy is from the Wind Forest, then he might have some useful information, Mag thought to himself as he looked at Blower. He then handed over the 2 ice cream cones they had ordered to Yabimiya. As for Amy's sharp tongue, that was not something that he had taught her. He had always taught Amy the importance of being a kind person, but she simply had a natural knack for delivering unintentionally scathing remarks. "Here's your mocha ice cream." Yabimiya handed an ice cream cone to Blower. "Thank you." Blower accepted the ice cream cone from Yabimiya, and his eyes were immediately drawn to it. The fragrant aroma of green tea wafted toward him, and just its scent alone was enough to revitalize him. Even the 1,000-year-old tea tree that drew water from the spring of life didn't produce tea leaves with such a decadent aroma. "This is fantastic tea." Blower couldn't help but praise the tea leaves used in the ice cream. Aside from sleeping, drinking tea was his second hobby. He had collected and tasted renowned tea leaves from the Wind Forest as well as all over the Norland continent. However, it was the first time he had smelled such a rich tea aroma, and even the spring tea from Vic Mountain paled drastically in comparison. Did he grind the tea leaves into powder before putting it into these snowballs? Wouldn't it be very bitter, then? Blower was a little perplexed. After a brief hesitation, he emulated Amy and took a lick of the ice cream. The ice cream melted on the tip of his tongue, and a sweet milky flavor flowed down his throat along with the refreshing flavor of green tea. It was as if a tender tea leaf enveloped in a layer of rich milk had flowed down his throat, washing away all of the impurities in his digestive system. The refreshing feeling immediately made him more alert and focused. "Boss, you're wasting these ingredients." Blower suddenly rose to his feet and pointed at the kitchen with an enraged expression. However, his sudden interrogation drew the attention of all of the customers in the restaurant. Was this beautiful elf trying to stir up some trouble? It had been a long time since Mamie Restaurant had last seen a troublemaker. Constantine was also looking at Blower with a concerned expression. Mamie Restaurant had many rules, and one of them was that speaking in a loud voice was prohibited. As such, Blower's violent outburst could incur some consequences. Amy looked up at Blower with her mouth slightly agape. She was unable to comprehend why this beautiful big sister had suddenly flown into a rage. Besides, why was she criticizing her father? Yabimiya was also at a loss for what to do as she stared at the enraged Blower. She didn't even know why Blower was so angry. Sally looked at the mocha ice cream in Blower's hand, and she could roughly guess why Blower was so enraged. Mag emerged from the kitchen with 2 plates of Yangzhou fried rice. He placed the 2 dishes in front of customers who'd ordered it, and smiled as he asked, "Is there a complaint you would like to raise against the restaurant?" "You biscuit." Blower was just about to launch into a violent tirade when he realized that he had to maintain his image as a graceful gentlewoman, so he could only revert to hurling a much milder insult. "Arg! So embarrassing." Blower wanted to facepalm as soon as he said that. Mag faltered upon hearing that. This guy sure was trying hard to maintain his image. That insult almost had him bursting into laughter. "She's so cute even when she's angry, I really lucked out today." Constantine looked at Blower with an intoxicated expression. Yabimiya couldn't help but burst into laughter. This beautiful elf sure was amusing. All of the onlooking customers also burst into laughter. Her way of insulting people was hilarious, and one simply couldn't bring themselves to be angry at her. "Big sister Shirley, what's a biscuit? Is it some type of food?" Amy asked. "A biscuit is a type of dessert." Blower's expression was slightly awkward, but he still provided an explanation to Amy. He cleared his throat to alleviate his embarrassment as he grumbled, "How can you use such premium quality tea leaves to make dessert? Does your conscience not ache? Do you know how precious these tea leaves are? Even the spring tea of Vic Mountain can't compare to this tea." "I'm aware of that." Mag nodded with a smile. These tea leaves were produced by the system, and they were the best of the best. Even back in his past life, when his father had offered him all types of renowned teas, he had never tasted such superb tea. Then how could you waste these tea leaves like this? Blower had initially thought that Mag was simply unaware of how precious these tea leaves were, so he was even more infuriated upon learning the fact that Mag was fully aware of this yet still chose to make these tea leaves into dessert. It's exactly because of this that these tea leaves have been incorporated into this restaurant's dessert. Each and every one of my customers deserve nothing less than the best, that is my mantra when picking out ingredients. This is the best tea leaf I could find, so I used it to make mocha ice cream. Every other ingredient used in this restaurant is of just as high a caliber. Mag offered a calm and collected response in the face of Blower's fury as if he were elaborating on something very normal. Could that possibly be true? All of the ingredients used in this restaurant are of the same caliber as these tea leaves? Mag's eyes were clear and bright, and they seemed to hold some sort of magical power that convinced others to believe him. Thinking back to the Young Joe fried rice he had just had, Blower discovered that all of the ingredients within really were of a far better quality than anything he had had in the past. How can this guy remain so composed in the face of my stunning beauty? How could there be a man in this world that's immune to my charms? Could it be that he likes men? Blower was starting to be led astray by his thoughts. No wonder the food from Mamie restaurant is so delicious. Boss Mag has been putting so much effort into the ingredients. It's really rare to see a restaurant owner dedicating so much to their cooking. These dishes are well worth the price, Harrison praised. Indeed. Just the ingredients alone should be more expensive than the prices he's charging. I wonder where Boss Mag sourced so many premium ingredients from. In particular, it's really hard to get your hands on good quality fish, prawn, and shiitake mushrooms in Chaos City. Trajay nodded with a curious expression. The customers who were initially hesitant about purchasing dishes due to their tight budgets immediately made up their minds upon hearing that. They suddenly felt as if several hundred copper coins for each dish was an absolute bargain. I'll admit that you have a point there, they're your tea leaves, so you can do whatever you want with them. Blower looked at Mag with a serious expression as he asked, but do you sell these tea leaves on their own? Everyone turned to Blower with a hint of surprise on their faces. They didn't think that she would back down so easily. Sorry, I'm not selling the tea leaves. Mag shook his head in response. Truth be told, he didn't even have any tea leaves. The system had only provided him with mocha, which had already been ground into powder, so he didn't have any tea leaves to sell. State your price. Even if it's twice as expensive as the ice cream, I'll take it, and I'll take as much as you have to offer. Blower was unwilling to give up on such premium tea leaves. Furthermore, his heart throbbed with pain upon seeing tea leaves of such a phenomenal caliber being used as dessert flavoring. The green tea is only used for making mocha ice cream. I do not have a large quantity of the tea leaves, so I'm not selling them. Mag shook his head in response. The price being proposed wasn't tempting to him in the slightest. He then continued in a cautionary voice, please be quiet in the restaurant. Raising your voice for no reason will disrupt other customers and compromise their dining experience. If you disregard this rule, you will be blacklisted and banned from the restaurant. 10 times. I'll pay 10 times the price to buy your tea leaves. Blower gritted his teeth and made another bid. System, let's sell tea leaves instead. He's paying 10 times the price. Mag's expression remained indifferent, but he was already screaming internally. Please remember who you are a man destined to become the god of cookery. Are you going to allow yourself to be shaken by such a paltry amount? Money cannot buy your dignity. The system gave a heart-wrenching response. I'll split it 50-50 with you, Mag cut it off. Well, it's not entirely non-negotiable. The production of tea leaves this year is actually pretty good, so it won't hurt to sell about 15 to 25 kilograms. We can sell the tea leaves, but we can't just sell it for a flat price. 10 times the price is clearly too low. 250 grams will only fetch about 10,000 copper coins. If we hold auctions instead, the prices would skyrocket. Mag made up his mind before saying to the system, System, give me 5 kilograms of tea leaves. I'll purchase it from you for 5 times the price, which will be half of the price I'll sell it to him for. Deliver the tea leaves to the closet on the second floor. Ding, 50,000 copper coins have been successfully deducted. Ding. 5 kilograms of tea leaves have been delivered to the closet on the second floor. The system was overjoyed. Good. A smile appeared on Mag's face, and he shook his head as he said, our restaurant has a rule which stipulates that only completed dishes can be sold. If you'd like to purchase ingredients, then you can purchase them through auctions. Perhaps there will be a tea leaf auction in the near future. Auctions. All of the customers in the restaurant were quite intrigued to hear that. They were all rather curious about the ingredients used by the restaurant. Just auctioning off ingredients would fetch indeterminate prices, and it would be unknown if people would even purchase the ingredients. After all, for most people, it was much more preferable to eat at Mamie restaurant rather than purchase ingredients for a higher price than dishes made by Mag. Without learning Mag's cooking methods, even with the same ingredients, no one would be able to cook good food anyway. I see. Blower quickly identified the crux of the matter. If avid tea lovers were to hear about the quality of these tea leaves, then they would definitely sell for more than 10 times the price in an auction. The restaurant owner was clearly aware of this, and was trying to make greater profits. That's not fair. In an auction, the price would definitely be more than 10 times the cost price. This is fraud. The system's furious voice sounded. Didn't I already give you half of 10 times the price? You have to learn to be content with what you have, only then will you be happy in life. If you're too fixated on numbers, you'll lose sight of the true meaning of life, Mag preached in a heartfelt manner. In any case, he had already obtained the tea leaves, and he could decide when he wanted to hold an auction. Once more and more people began to realize just how precious these tea leaves were, he would auction them in limited amounts. That was not a bad money-making tactic. Your ice cream is going to melt if you don't eat it soon. Mag offered words of caution to Blower before going back into his kitchen. Blower faltered upon hearing that before looking down, only to discover a drop of green ice cream slowly sliding downward. It was hanging on the edge of the ball, and was about to drip onto the floor at any moment. Blower immediately discarded her gentlewoman facade upon seeing that, and caught the drop of melting ice cream with her mouth. The sweet refreshing flavor melted in his mouth, and he was involuntarily entranced by the decadent taste. The ice cream was very refreshing, and not bitter in the slightest. Even though he still felt like it was a waste of tea leaves, he had to admit that the ice cream really was extremely delicious. No matter how high the bids go up in the auction, I must have those tea leaves. Blower made up his mind before immersing herself in her ice cream again. Looks like Madame Shirley really likes those tea leaves. Next time Boss Mag auctions off some tea leaves, I'll be sure to buy some for her. She'll be really pleased with me then, right? Constantine stared at Blower with a love-struck smile on his face. He felt as if watching Blower eat was more enjoyable than eating himself. After finishing her blueberry ice cream, Amy made her way over to Blower, and whispered, "Big Sister Shirley, you have to be careful of that man over there. I feel like he wants to do bad things to you." Blower looked at an entranced Constantine, and was in full agreement with Amy's assessment. He nodded, and said, "Don't worry, I'm super strong. Here's your Yangzhou fried rice." Yabimiya placed the second serving of Yangzhou fried rice in front of Blower. "Thank you." Blower nodded in response. He looked at the half-eaten ice cream in his hand, then down at the steaming Yangzhou fried rice on the table. It had been many years since he had eaten like this. This restaurant seemed to possess some kind of magic property that caused his willpower to completely crumble. He felt as if he had lost all of his hopes and dreams, and it was quite a crushing feeling, but that sense of depression was assuaged by the delicious food placed in front of him. This food is too good to miss. Screw portion control. I'm just going to eat to my heart's content and diet later. Blower set all of his conflicting thoughts aside and immersed himself in the delicious fried rice. Will the young master be able to approach young Mistress Sally? In his current state, I'd rather not have him approach her. But then, what would be the point in coming here? Ingw's thoughts were very conflicted as he sat within a horse-drawn carriage outside the restaurant. Burp. Half an hour later, Blower emerged from the restaurant and patted his stomach. He turned to look at the restaurant's sign, and vowed, next time, I'll definitely curb my appetite. See you next time, Big Sister Shirley. Our restaurant still has a lot of amazing food waiting for you. Amy's voice sounded from within the restaurant. Don't try to tempt me. I definitely won't fall for your tricks. Blower turned away with a resolute expression, yet he couldn't help but gulp. This little guy was like the ideal mascot for the restaurant. She only had to stand there and eat something, and everyone's appetite would suddenly spike. As Blower got onto the horse-drawn carriage, Ingw immediately asked, Young master, did you meet young Mistress Sally? She's pretty good looking, not as beautiful as I am, but not bad nonetheless. Blower nodded in response. After a brief silence, Ingw prompted, anything else? That's all. Blower splayed his hands open with an innocent expression. That's all? You were there for almost an hour, and all you were able to verify is that she's pretty good looking. Ingw felt as if his intelligence were being insulted. Yes, isn't that the key? Think about it, if she's too ugly, she would be plunged into self-pity if she were to see my actual appearance. She would be madly in love with me, but too scared to approach me. That would make it very difficult for me to complete my mission. Blower nodded in response. I have a feeling you were simply too busy eating and forgot about doing anything else. Ingw rolled his eyes. How did you know? Blower turned to Ingw with a hint of surprise on his face before praising, the food from that restaurant is so good. In particular, their rainbow fried rice and that dessert known as ice cream. Both are the best foods I've ever had in my life. Let's go back. Ingw shook his head with a dejected sigh. He was suddenly struck by the feeling that it was a very bad idea to pin his hopes on such an unreliable young master. System, state your prices for the music that can be played using the restaurant's new sound system. After all of the customers had left, Mag sat down in a chair and brewed himself some tea. The horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of the Elven embassy and Blower and Ingw got off. A middle-aged elf quickly made his way toward them, and handed Ingw a letter as he whispered, This is an urgent confidential letter sent from our elven race. Something important must have happened. The middle-aged elf then turned to glance at Blower with a curious look. He had never seen that beautiful woman before. Why had she gotten off the carriage together with Ingw? The magic seal on the envelope was unraveled by Ingw, and he pulled out the letter within. After reading through the letter, his expression changed drastically as he turned to Blower, and said, Young Moss, Madam Shirley, come with me, I have something I need to speak to you about. All right. Blower nodded with a curious expression as he followed Ingw inside. After entering the room, Blower asked, What happened? Have a look for yourself. Ingw handed the letter over to him. Princess Irina came out of her cave. But I'm here in Chaos City. Arg, how could I miss out on something so important? Blower clasped a hand over his heart with a pained expression. That's not even the point. Master Schubert of the Kral family had been killed, and the Queen has abolished slavery. That's going to deal a major blow to all of the major families, and we could be impacted as well. As a worthy heir to the family estate, that's something that you should be focusing on. Ingw was quite exasperated as he looked at Blower. Oh, really? I think you're the one missing the point here. The major families of the elven race only slowly began to emerge following the war among species. Following that, Helena introduced several revolutions, which made the major families more and more powerful, but what's the point in doing that? Helena appears to be laying a strong foundation for our elven race, but she's actually destroying our foundation. Elves have lived freely for thousands of years, freedom is the identity of all elves. Blower shook his head with a smile as he said, do you know why so many people revere and support Princess Irina in the elven race? It's not because of how powerful she is. Instead, she exemplifies what an elf should be. She's regal and graceful, free-spirited and willful, and she refuses to be restricted by anyone. Ingw looked at the mocking smile on Blower's face, and fell deep in thought. After a while, he adopted a stern expression, and said, that's an inevitable step that must be taken. It's mandatory in order to make the elven race more powerful so that we can prevent our brethren from being enslaved when the next war arises. So you're going to enslave them while telling them that you're doing so to protect them from being enslaved? And then, you're going to make them fight at the front lines to protect the very same people that enslaved them in the first place? Do I really need to elaborate on why this is a flawed system and flawed logic? Blower looked into Ingw's eyes with a serious expression, and said, Ingw, you've lived for many centuries and endured countless battles. I want to ask you this, are the elves in the Wind Forest truly happy? Even the members of the major families who have become lazy and complacent, and accustomed to being tended to by elven servants, are they truly happy? Ingw fell silent again, and Blower didn't say anything, either. Instead, he stared intently at Ingw, awaiting his reply. Perhaps you really aren't fit to inherit the role of leader of the Baybili family. Ingw looked at Blower, and a smile appeared on his face as he said, but you're an exceptional thinker. The Baybili family needs a thinker like you, and perhaps the entire elven race also needs someone like you. I'm not going to tell anyone what you said to me, and I hope you can refrain from doing so as well. At the very least, do not repeat what you just said to anyone until you're in a position of power that allows you say these things. Some things I only say to the right people. A smile also appeared on Blower's face, and he slowly unclenched his fists. Looking back at my close to 800 years in this world, the elven race wasn't in its most miserable state during the war among species when the Wind Forest was almost conquered by the demons and the orcs. Even then, the songs of our people were never silenced, and everyone was still full of hope for the future. But now, I can never hear those joyful songs anymore. Picking wild fruits has become a job, and the days when you could sit on a branch and do nothing for an entire day have ceased to exist. There is no more war, but everyone has instead become unhappy. It's a very depressing sight to behold. Ingw was slightly dejected. That's why I chose to permanently reside in Chaos City. Compared to the Wind Forest, this city is full of vitality and freedom. I believe that this city will truly become a paradise in the future, I just hope I can live to see that day. This is a comforting city, just like the Wind Forest was back a long time ago. A smile appeared on Ingw's face, and a hint of hope reignited in his eyes as he turned to Blower. If you want to help the elven princess, then you must also become more powerful. The major families have already split the entire elven race among themselves, and even the queen can only abolish a law or two from the elven laws. At times like this, my stunning beauty is required to bring joy to the world. Blower turned to Ingw, and nodded with a serious expression as he said, I also hope to hear the songs of freedom ringing out in the Wind Forest again someday. I'd love to hear it one last time before I leave this world. Ingw nodded with a smile. The system rejects your request. An eye-rolling emoji followed this message. Are you holding a grudge, system? Mag also couldn't help but roll his eyes. It appeared that the system was still angry about the tea leaves. In response, Mag wasn't feeling guilty in the slightest. He had to screw over the system to earn more money, it was the way of life. Alright, looks like you're not planning on earning any money, then. In that case, I'll just have to use Amy's music box. That thing has about 20 songs in it, the genres are a bit haphazardous, but it'll suffice. Mag got up to retrieve the music box with a calm expression. How can you play a song like Gakuraku Jodo in a high-end restaurant? How can customers focus on their meals while struggling not to erupt into dance and sing? It's going to be a disaster. The system was distraught. So what? That just shows how unique our restaurant is. It'll present a different experience to our customers. Mag shrugged nonchalantly. The system replied sternly, the god of cookery must pay attention to every single detail. Appropriate music will enhance the dining experience significantly, while unsuitable music could have great detrimental effects. You need to look at the statistic, and choose that's enough. I'll get a J. Joe music pack first. How much will that cost? Mag abruptly cut off the system mid-rant. Sorry, J. Choo's music is unavailable due to copyright issues. We are currently doing our best to rectify this situation, the system responded feebly. Me holy f***ck. What kind of shoddy music distribution website are you using? Can't you go get a membership on QQ Music? Mag grumbled. No. Free music distribution services are where I belong, the system sternly refused. I'll give you the money for a membership. Mag pursed his lips. I'll make an account right away. The system's joyful voice sounded in reply. F***ck off, Mag grumbled internally. After heated negotiations and bartering, Mag finally managed to purchase 1,000 classical compositions from the system for the price of a membership plus 3,000 copper coins. On top of that, he also purchased an album containing all of J. Choo's songs. Did J. Joe release another new song recently? Mag discovered that there was a song named I Don't Care If You Don't Love Me on the playlist, but it was grey and unplayable. It hasn't been released yet, but it will be coming out soon. If you would like to purchase it after its release, you may do so at an additional cost. The system provides music with the best sound quality, and your satisfaction is guaranteed, the system encouraged. I was the one who got you the membership. Mag rolled his eyes. He was then drawn to the rather tsundere nature of the song title. He was wondering just what kind of new song this singer from his childhood would release. Let's test out this new sound system first. Mag rid himself of that train of thought before turning to Amy, who was chasing Ugly Duckling all around the restaurant. He smiled, and said, Amy, I'm going to be playing some music. Don't be frightened, it's just a super big music box. Sally and Yabimiya had already left, so there was only him, Amy, and Ugly Duckling left in the restaurant. A super big music box. Amy's eyes lit up with curiosity and anticipation as she looked around, searching for this so-called music box. Let's listen to Ballad pour Adeline first. Mag tapped the screen as he made his decision. As a level 10 amateur pianist in his past life, the first piano composition that he had learned to play was this piece. His mother had forced him to learn a lot of random pieces back then. In reality, the skill of playing piano proved to be absolutely useless after he grew up, but it was certainly true that learning to play a musical instrument taught him discipline. Smoothly flowing piano notes began to play. This piece was extremely popular, often used as recess bells in the schools, phone ringtones, customer service waiting music, etc. It really did have a unique charm, and the sprightly tune immediately made him feel more carefree and relaxed. The effect created by the surround sound system really was far more exceptional than that of a normal sound system. The sound quality was impeccable even to Mag's picky ears, and he felt as if he had been transported to a concert hall, watching a live performance. It was as if the artist were sitting right in front of him, playing the piece exclusively for his listening pleasure. A faint smile appeared on Mag's face, and he was taken back to his childhood, when he was struggling to play his piano while his mother sat silently behind him. At the time, they weren't very busy yet, and even though they were quite strict, those times were still fond memories for Mag to look back on. Ha ha ha! Amy's giggles snapped Mag out of his train of thought, and he turned around, only to discover her dancing with Ugly Duckling. Their dancing was very clumsy and casual, but the two of them were simply too adorable, and Mag also burst into laughter. Father, does this mean our restaurant will become a super big music box from now on? We live in the music box, and our customers can dine in the music box as well. Amy turned to Mag with an excited expression. That's right. Music can bring joy to people, so we should transmit this joy to all of our customers. Mag nodded with a smile, and his heart was brimming with contentment at the sight of Amy. He really cherished the time that he could spend by her side. At the very least, he wouldn't have any regrets if he were to look back on his life at a later date. Mag lowered the volume of the music slightly. Beautiful music was enjoyable to customers, but he was opening a restaurant, not a dance hall. Delicious cuisine was the main thing he had to offer, not music. He couldn't allow the music to distract the customers from his food. Amy, I have something else fun to show you. Come upstairs with me. Mag patted Amy's head with a smile before picking her up. He also picked up Ugly Duckling with his other arm and carried both of them upstairs. Something fun? What is it, father? Amy's eyes lit up with curiosity. You'll know soon. Mag smiled as he carried Amy upstairs. He then gently pushed open the door to the previously vacant room on the second floor. The door slowly opened, and a children's playground filled with toys and recreational facilities was revealed. Wow! Amy's eyes widened with incredulity as she looked at everything in the room. Meow! Ugly Duckling's eyes also lit up with excitement. Father, is this really for me? Amy turned to Mag, and she was still struggling to believe her eyes. Of course. This is a playground prepared especially for you. You can invite your other little friends to play here in the future. Mag nodded with a smile. During the busy dinner service, Amy often had to sit behind the counter in boredom until closing time. Mag didn't want to see her suffer like that, which was why he had spent so many gold coins to purchase a playground from the system. Father, you're the best. Amy planted a kiss on Mag's cheek with an elated smile on her face. She didn't have a single toy before, but she now had her very own playground. She could invite Jessica, Daphne, and her other little friends to play with her here in the future. This is just a small playground. I'm going to build you a bigger and better one in the future, with a massive Ferris wheel, a merry-go-round, a roller coaster, and it's going to be 10,000 times bigger than this one. Mag's ego had been inflated by the kiss planted on his cheek by Amy, and he was brimming with confidence. Really? Amy's eyes immediately lit up. She didn't know what those Ferris wheels, merry-go-rounds, or roller coasters were, but she was really looking forward to a playground that was 10,000 times the size of this one. Of course. When I earn enough money, I'll build one for you. Mag suddenly realized that he had made quite a far-fetched promise, but he simply couldn't bear to take back his words at the sight of Amy's expectant expression. If I open up an amusement park, I have to drag a few idiots in to contribute to the construction costs. Mag made up his mind there and then. It's been more than a month since I ran away. I wonder what the current situation in the elven race is like. I wonder if Mother is worried about me. Sally walked along the street and prepared to return to Gaia Hotel for her shift there. The wages being offered at the hotel were absolutely pitiful, but there was free accommodation, and the boss was a very kind person, so Sally still persisted with working 2 jobs a day. Who was that elf from earlier? Did she really grow up outside the Wind Forest? They've always said that elves outside the Wind Forest have been abandoned by the god of life, and that they've never been blessed nor acknowledged by the god of life. All of them are supposed to be hideously ugly and pitifully weak, but I can sense that elf was no less powerful than I am, and she was quite beautiful too, so what should I believe? Sally was very confused. She hadn't approached any other elves in the past month, and she was quite eager to understand more about them. Perhaps I can talk to her next time. Princess Irina had once said that the outside world was completely different from what those in the elven race proclaim it to be. Those words had made a deep impression on Sally, and she was determined to find out what this world was like for herself. I'm going to dine at Mamie restaurant with Luna in a bit. Should I wear male attire, or female attire? In the city lord's castle, Vivian stared at the clothes in her closet and fell into deep thought. I'll go in male attire. That way, Boss Mag will know that Luna's taken, so he won't make any moves on her. Vivian made up her mind and picked out a set of loose-fitting male attire. Teacher Luna, student Amy is so awesome. Can I learn magic as well? I really want to. All of you can learn magic, but you're still too young, so you have to learn basic knowledge first. Next year, you'll be able to participate in the magic trials, and all those who pass the trials can officially begin to learn magic, Luna replied with a smile. She patted the disappointed little student on the head and heaved an internal resigned sigh. Amy had defeated the powerful Magus Tower team on her own, thus elevating herself to a legendary status in Chaos School. At the same time, a large number of students became extremely interested in magic after witnessing her performance, including some elementary section kids. She had had a similar conversation with her students no less than 10 times already. They were far more eager to learn magic than the students from previous years, and it was all thanks to Amy. Little Amy sure is impressive, though. She's only been learning magic for a month, and can already defeat such powerful opponents. Looks like Mr. Mag was right, she really is a genius. Luna looked out the window as a smile appeared on her face. A letter written by her grandfather had arrived from Rodu, telling her that the decimal system was indeed more convenient and efficient than the numerical system currently in use in the Roth Empire. He was trying to start an arithmetic revolution, and was asking her to invite Mag to go to Rodu again. If Mag refused again, he would come to personally visit him in Chaos City. Krasua and Novan left the meeting prior to its conclusion. Right after exiting the conference chamber, Krasua turned to Novan, and asked, "Novan, I heard you're preparing to expand Chaos School." "I am. Chaos School is already quite a large school, but there are still so many children in Chaos City who don't have a chance to receive education. In particular, receiving education is an opportunity for the children from impoverished families to escape poverty, but the opportunity simply isn't available to them at the moment." Novan nodded in response. "How much are you planning to expand the school?" Krasua asked. "I'm still communicating with the City Lord's Castle to see how much cash they can offer, but Michael has been having a hard time these past few years as well. Constructing infrastructure for Chaos City has exhausted almost all of the financial resources available to the City Lord's Castle, so he probably won't be able to offer much." Novan's brows furrowed with concern, and the wrinkles on his face became even more pronounced. "Come with me, I've got something to show you," Krasua said as he led the way forward. "What is it?" Novan asked. "You'll know when we get there," Krasua replied. "What's this?" Novan was led into a building where the entire first floor was filled with wooden boxes. There were so many of them that there was barely any walking space left in the room. "Open one and have a look for yourself." Krasua chuckled. Novan opened the wooden box nearest to him, and shiny golden light immediately escaped from within. The box was completely filled with gold coins, silver coins, and dragon coins. A hint of surprise appeared in Novan's eyes. He waved his hand, and a row of boxes beside him was opened, revealing even more coins within. Golden light filled the entire room, illuminating the darkness. "You can take half of this money to expand this school. I'm loaning it to you with 0 interest, so you don't have to be in a hurry to return it," Krasua offered with a smile. "Even after all these years, I still owe you." Novan looked at Krasua and sighed with emotion. "I trust you. I'm sure you'll return what you owe me." Krasua waved his hand nonchalantly. He pointed at the rest of the coins, and said, "The rest will be reserved for little Amy. Building a magic room is going to cost a lot. Your name will be recorded in Chaos School history, Teacher Krasua," Novan said with a smile. He then walked out the door, and continued, "I'll send people to collect the money and begin the expansion as quickly as possible. We should be able to complete the operation before the commencement of the next semester. That way, we'll be able to take in more students next year." As expected, only the students mattered to him. "I was thinking that perhaps he would treat me to a meal." Krasua shook his head with a resigned expression. Outside the city lord's castle, Gustav turned to Dracula, and asked, "Dracula, the final agreement from our conference has already been signed. Toros and I have to go back to report the news to our brethren, would you like to come with us?" "No need. I don't think we're on good enough terms to have to go home together. Demons like us don't have any friends," Dracula replied with a lazy smile. "You're right about that. Farewell, then." Toros nodded as he climbed onto his massive black boar. He cracked his whip on the boar's back, upon which it began to gallop along the street, attracting a lot of attention in the process. "Farewell." Gustav transformed into his half-spider form, and he disappeared amid a burst of spatial ripples. These guys don't know how to enjoy life. What's so good about returning to the Demon Islands? You have to enjoy a few good meals here before going back. Dracula pursed his lips as he walked slowly down the street. As he did so, he murmured to himself, "Tofu pudding, here I come." Mag played with Amy and Ugly Duckling in the playground for an entire afternoon. The place wasn't very large, but all of the facilities were made to be quite compact, so they didn't take up much space. There was a small seesaw, a two-seat merry-go-round, small bumper cars. There was everything one would expect to find in a miniature amusement park. "This is so fun, Father. I love this playground, and it's purple as well. I'm going to bring Jessica and Daphne here, they'd really love it here too." Amy's hair was plastered to her forehead because of sweat, but she was looking at Mag with excitement shimmering in her eyes. "All right, you can invite them to come and play with you on your days off." Mag wiped the sweat off Amy's forehead and picked up Ugly Duckling, who was still disoriented after riding on the merry-go-round. He then carried the two of them toward the bathroom as he said, "All right, let's stop here for this afternoon. I'll give the two of you a bath, then open the restaurant up for the dinner service." "Yay! I want a bubble bath!" Amy yelled with excitement. Meow, the dizzy Ugly Duckling was immediately alert upon hearing a bath being mentioned, and it stared at Mag as it tried to struggle free from his arm. "Ugly Duckling, if you're not going to take a bath, then don't sleep on my bed tonight." "I don't want to sleep with a dirty cat." Amy turned to Ugly Duckling with a stern expression. Meow. Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy before resting its head on Mag's arm with a pitiable, resigned expression. Mag was in full agreement with Amy's sentiment. Cats universally despised waters and baths, but Amy was always holding Ugly Duckling in her arms, so he always paid a lot of attention to Ugly Duckling's hygiene. He placed Ugly Duckling in its designated little basin, and Amy began to splash it with water. Its fluffy fur was immediately plastered to its body, and after soap bubbles were applied, only its pitiable little face was still visible. All of a sudden, it shook violently, spraying both Mag and Amy with water and soap, which sent Amy into hysterical giggles. After bathing Amy and Ugly Duckling, Mag fitted Amy into a clean set of clothes. He then took a bath himself, and changed into a clean chef's suit before going downstairs. Yabimiya and Sally were sitting in silence downstairs amid a slightly awkward atmosphere. After familiarizing themselves with each other, Yabimiya became more talkative, while Sally was still as aloof as ever. As such, the two of them would often sit like this in silence. "Your clothes look really good, Amy." Yabimiya and Sally both turned toward the counter upon hearing footsteps coming down the stairs. Yabimiya turned to Ugly Duckling, and ushered it as she said, "Come here, Ugly Duckling." Ugly Duckling took a glance at her before lazily closing its eyes. It rubbed its little head against Amy's foot and raised its paws for a hug. "You can stay down there." Amy shook her head before rushing over to Yabimiya. She then raised her little arms, and wheedled, "Big Sister Mia, I want a hug." "All right, let me give Princess Amy a hug." Yabimiya smiled as she picked Amy up and settled her on her leg. Amy laid her head on Yabimiya's chest, and closed her eyes as she murmured with contentment, "It's so soft and comfy. She's so pretty. She's going to be a fine beauty when she grows up." Yabimiya looked down at Amy with a doting smile. "Hers really are big." Sally looked at Yabimiya's chest, then at her own, and was instantly somewhat dejected. Meow Ugly Duckling sat on the ground, looking up at Yabimiya and Amy with a pitiable expression. Mag entered the kitchen with a smile. He really loved the peaceful atmosphere in the restaurant. He was quite fond of Sally and Mia, and it appeared that he wouldn't have to hire any more staff before the restaurant expanded. Mag began to prepare the ingredients for the dinner service, but he suddenly sensed someone standing behind him. He turned around, only to discover Yabimiya standing at the kitchen's entrance. "Boss, I'm just having a quick look." A panicked expression appeared on Yabimiya's face as if she were a kid that had been caught doing something wrong. "Come in if you want to have a look. The restaurant's business is improving quite quickly, so I wanted to teach you how to make ice cream and Rigiamo anyway. Would you like to learn? I can teach you some other dishes if you want as well." She wouldn't be able to see anything from the entrance, so Mag invited her into the kitchen. "Me?" Yabimiya's eyes immediately lit up, but she then quickly waved her hands as she said, "No, no, no, I'm too stupid and clumsy. I'm only going to ruin the food and hurt the restaurant's reputation." "How would you know that if you don't try? As long as you genuinely want to make delicious food for our customers, I'm sure you'll be able to succeed." Mag looked at her with an encouraging smile. "Can I really do it?" The gentle encouragement in Mag's eyes reminded Yabimiya of her mother's kind gaze, but she was still a little hesitant. "Of course you can. You're a good girl with a great work ethic, I'm sure you'll be more than capable enough for this task." Mag nodded with a confident expression. "Father's right. Big Sister Mia is super awesome. I really want to taste ice cream made by Big Sister Mia." Amy had also appeared at the entrance of the kitchen, and offered words of encouragement. "You can do it. You'll actually be good at a lot of things if you believe in yourself." Sally also offered Yabimiya an encouraging smile. Yabimiya was suddenly filled with confidence, and she stepped forward as she asked, "Then, can I try it?" "Of course you can. Even if you don't succeed on your first few tries, it doesn't matter. The weather is so hot today, we could use some ice cream to cool us down." Mag nodded with a smile before instructing Yabimiya how to use the ice cream machine. The ice cream machine was a fully automatic piece of high-tech equipment that appeared daunting at first, but was actually quite simple to use. After mixing together all of the required ingredients, anyone would be able to press the right sequence of buttons to produce the ice cream. The only technical part was catching the ball of ice cream perfectly at the center of the wafer cone, ensuring no damage was done to the ball as well as that the second ball of ice cream could balance perfectly on top of the first without the two affecting each other's structure and shape. Those two elements required finesse and technique, and it had taken Mag many tries in the test field for the god of cookery to find the best way to do things. "Make sure to concentrate, press this button, and the ice cream machine will be turned on. A ball of ice cream will fall from here, and you need to use the cone to catch it like so." Mag began to explain the steps to Yabimiya. All the while, Yabimiya looked on with rapt focus, asking a question from time to time. She often operated the dishwasher, so she was used to kitchen utensils that could do work at just the press of a button. "Where are you going, young master?" Ing was slightly surprised to see Blower on his way out of the Elven embassy. "The dinner service is about to begin soon. I plan to go scouting at Mamie restaurant again." Blower nodded with a serious expression. He had changed into a set of blue and white robes, and also reverted back to his normal male appearance. Luna. At the school gates, Vivian rushed over to Luna in a set of green male attire. School had ended for the day quite a while ago, so there were barely any students at the school gates. "Why are you dressed like that?" Luna faltered upon seeing Vivian, and an exasperated look appeared on her face. "Have you been struck by my masculine charm?" Vivian looked at Luna with feigned love in her eyes as she attempted to hook a finger gently under Luna's chin. "Not at all." Luna took a nimble step backward to avoid Vivian's hand as a smile appeared on her face. "Sigh, women are such fickle creatures. Last time, you told me that you wanted to elope to the corners of the world with me, but you've completely gone back on your word now. What am I to do? A pained expression appeared on Vivian's face as if she had been dealt a heavy blow. That's enough clowning around, let's go. If we're late, we're going to have to wait in line for a long time. Luna held onto Vivian's hand with a resigned expression, and led her to the nearby horse-drawn carriage as she said, "Plus, we're at the school gates, and you're in male attire, it'll be bad if students were to see us like this." "Why's that? Are teachers not allowed to be in a relationship? Principal Novan isn't even prohibiting students from entering relationships. You need to abandon your archaic mindset, Luna. This is Chaos City, not Rodu, you need to live more freely in a city of freedom like this," Vivian lectured. "I'm not interested in having a relationship at all at the moment. All I want is to teach to the best of my abilities. I want to draw more attention to those kids who can't even afford food. There are so many more things I want to do." Luna shook her head. Vivian turned to Luna, and asked, "What else do you want to do?" Luna looked back at Chaos School with a smile on her face, and said, "There are many things I still want to do. After learning how to spread freedom and equality in the world from Principal Novan, I want to set up a school in Rodu as well, and teach kids what freedom and equality are. But Boss Mag's food is so good, would you really be able to leave that behind to go back to Rodu?" Vivian asked. Luna faltered upon hearing that, and hesitated momentarily, but she still gritted her teeth and said, "I will definitely go back. This is a promise I made to myself when I chose to stay in Chaos City, and it's also my dream." "I lost my dream after eating my first spicy grilled fish," Vivian mused. "I definitely won't abandon my dreams for grilled fish." Luna shook her head with a serious expression. "Let's hurry up. I really miss my super delicious grilled fish." Vivian led Luna onto the horse-drawn carriage and instructed the coach driver to set off. "Vivian, what's your dream?" "My dream? In the past, I just wanted to lie around and do nothing for the rest of my life. Now that I can live without pain, I don't feel like lying around so much anymore. Maybe I should become a teacher too. What do you think? Don't you hate children?" "I do. Children are so annoying. But then again, I find them to be quite adorable sometimes. I can sense a lot of energy from kids, and I really like that." It was close to the commencement of the dinner service, and 2 long lines had appeared in front of Mamie restaurant again. Krasua and Urian hadn't arrived yet, so a few minor scuffles would erupt between the sweet and savory factions, but it was quite tranquil and peaceful overall. Constantine stood at the back of the line, looking around for the woman of his dreams. "Will Madame Shirley come back for dinner tonight?" Constantine was feeling rather concerned. When he had asked Shirley for her contact details earlier in the day, she had completely ignored him and left on a horse-drawn carriage. That was quite a humbling experience for him. He had picked up so many women in the past few years, and it was his first time being ignored like that by one of his targets. That only worked to further fuel his urge for conquest, though. However, he had to admit that Shirley gave him a different feeling from the women in the past. He felt as if he had to look up to her and treat her with care. That carriage. Right at that moment, a horse-drawn carriage approached Mamie restaurant, and Constantine's eyes immediately lit up. He recognized that carriage. It was the very one that Madame Shirley had gotten onto after lunch. He stared at the horse-drawn carriage, thinking about what he could do to capture the heart of this woman of his desires. The horse-drawn carriage stopped near Mamie restaurant, and Blower emerged from within in a graceful manner. He looked at the 2 lines outside Mamie restaurant, and faltered at the sight of Constantine. "This guy again? He sure is stubborn." Blower furrowed his brows. He had been harassed during lunch by the very same man, and was beginning to suspect this guy lived in Mamie restaurant. What? How did she become a male elf? Constantine's eyes widened in shock and incredulity as he stared at Blower. He clearly recalled that Shirley had gotten onto this horse-drawn carriage, so why had she since been replaced by a man? This male elf was also very graceful and handsome, but he most definitely wasn't Shirley. He was hoping that perhaps Shirley would also be on the carriage, but it left after the male elf disembarked, leaving Constantine feeling quite disappointed. Who is this guy? Why was he on Madame Shirley's horse-drawn carriage? Constantine surveyed Blower as he approached, and for some reason, his heart rate was beginning to spike. What's happening to me? Why is my heart beating faster at the sight of a male elf? He does look more beautiful than some women, but he's definitely a male elf. No, I must be reacting in this manner due to my disappointment in Shirley's absence. Constantine took a deep breath to calm himself down before smiling as he turned to Blower, and said, "Greetings, sir, may I ask in what way you're related to Madame Shirley? I saw you disembarking from her carriage just then, and I was wondering if Madame Shirley would come to dine at this restaurant tonight." Blower raised an eyebrow in response. He was going to pretend not to recognize this guy, but who would have thought that the latter could remember what his carriage looked like, and was even going as far as asking him about his relationship with Shirley? Seeing as Blower appeared to be a little displeased, Constantine immediately added, "I'm merely curious, I bear no ill will. Shirley is my little sister. She has plans for tonight, so she won't be able to come," Blower replied calmly. Many of the customers standing in front of the restaurant turned to look at Blower. Beautiful women were rather common, but men that were more beautiful than women were a lot rarer. Furthermore, he was a beautiful elf, and his arrival immediately drew the attention of many female customers. Even some male customers couldn't help but take a second glance at him. "She's your little sister." Constantine looked at Blower with a surprised expression. He suddenly discovered that Blower's facial features were indeed rather similar to Shirley's. If they were brother and sister, then that would explain why he had disembarked from Shirley's carriage. "Yes." Blower nodded in response. He didn't really want to speak with Constantine. "My name is Constantine. You look a lot like Madame Shirley." Constantine gave Blower a smile. After learning that Blower was Shirley's elder brother, his heart was put at ease. At the same time, he was thinking about how he could get closer to Blower as the latter could potentially play a role in his conquest of Shirley. "Beautiful people all look alike," Blower replied indifferently. He didn't really like this guy, but seeing as he appeared to have an eye for beauty, he was a lot more tolerable. "Indeed, there aren't very many elves in this world as beautiful as Madame Shirley and yourself." Constantine nodded with a genuine expression. For some reason, he was growing rather fond of Blower even though it was only their first meeting. Perhaps it was because he was related to Madame Shirley? "There are so many people lining up this early, as expected, business is great for Boss Mag's restaurant. I feel like it's becoming increasingly more difficult to get a meal here." A horse-drawn carriage stopped near the restaurant, and Vivian emerged with a disgruntled expression on her face. "Mr. Mag's food is worth lining up early for. I'm not surprised that business is so good for him." Luna also emerged from the carriage with a smile on her face. "Looks like our teacher Luna has been won over by Boss Mag's food. These are some danger signals I'm seeing." Vivian chuckled. "I know what I want, but you'd better make sure not to lose yourself over a grilled fish." Luna turned to Vivian with a smile. "I don't even want children, how could I become someone's stepmother?" "You don't have to worry about that." Vivian jumped down from the carriage with a nonchalant expression before turning to help Luna down as well. "The mandarin harvest seems to be quite bountiful this year." Luna looked at an old mandarin selling farmer on the side of the road with a smile on her face. Vivian looked at Luna and patted her on the shoulder as she said, "I'll buy a few mandarins, don't go anywhere." "There's no need for that, we're here for dinner." Luna shook her head with a smile, but Vivian was already walking toward the old farmer, so she could only stand on the spot with a resigned expression. Vivian knew that mandarins were one of her favorite fruits. "The mandarins look quite good, and the price was pretty low as well, so I bought a few extra," you can take some back with you. Vivian soon returned with a small basket of mandarins. She was holding 2 mandarins in her hands, one of which she gave to Luna as she placed the basket in the horse-drawn carriage. Thank you. Luna smiled as she looked at the mandarin in her hand. The golden mandarin was about the size of an adult's fist, and had smooth golden skin. One could tell just from looking at the mandarins that they were definitely freshly picked. The skin gave way easily even under gentle pressure, revealing the orange flesh of the mandarin within, and the refreshing sweet and sour aroma of the mandarin wafted forth. Luna gently bit down onto a section of the mandarin, which was semi-translucent, so light could pass through. She could clearly see the supple mandarin flesh within, and juice spilled into her mouth as she bit down, sending a sweet and sour flavor combination spilling into her mouth. It was as if she had instantly been teleported into a mandarin forest. There were golden mandarins everywhere as far as the eye could see, and the autumnal feeling in the air struck one with a carefree feeling. It's delicious. Luna turned to Vivian with a joyful smile on her face. Have some more, then. There's plenty more where that one came from. Vivian also smiled in response, but there was a sympathetic look in her eyes. Luna hailed from a well-off family, but she was living so frugally that she couldn't even bear to spend money on mandarins. Why couldn't she treat herself a little better? Luna nodded as she placed another section of mandarin into her mouth, smiling with elation as she did so. Vivian silently took the skin off the mandarin in her hand and placed it in Luna's hand. I feel like I'm almost full already, Luna said after finishing the 2 mandarins. That won't do. I'm treating you to a massive feast tonight, you can't just say you're full after eating 2 mandarins. Vivian furrowed her brows as she dragged Luna toward one of the long lines. As the 2 of them joined one of the lines, Vivian caught sight of Blower, and whispered to Luna, "Look at that elf, he's even more beautiful than most women. He really is quite beautiful." Luna was also stunned by Blower's appearance. He had long golden hair and a set of extremely handsome features. For a male elf to be described as beautiful was a testament to his stunning appearance. Blower turned around as if he had detected their gaze. His eyes rested on Vivian, and he noted that he was a rather handsome man, but he gave him a peculiar feeling for some reason. Blower felt as if something were amiss, but he couldn't quite place his finger on it. Perhaps there was a mutual sense of appreciation between handsome men like them. What does he want? Vivian looked straight back at Blower in a confrontational manner. There were countless handsome men in this world, she wasn't just going to swoon at every single one of them. Blower turned away upon seeing that. He didn't want to waste time on inconsequential characters. This bastard is ignoring me? Vivian raised an eyebrow. Being stared at was an uncomfortable feeling, but getting ignored pissed her off as well, and she was suddenly struck with an urge to hit someone. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, and a massive bat appeared in the air above the Aiden Square. It arrived directly over Mamie Restaurant in the blink of an eye, upon which it transformed into a man in black. He looked down at the long line down below with furrowed brows before turning his attention to the front of the line. He smiled as he murmured to himself, "I'm a 9th-tier vampire, surely no one can stop me from jumping the line." "Are you sure you want to do that?" Urian was making his way slowly over to Mamie Restaurant, and he appraised Dracula with a calm expression as the latter attempted to land at the front of the line. "You can try it." A horse-drawn carriage stopped nearby, and Krasu emerged from within with a smile on his face. Little Amy used melee magic to defeat a 4th-tier magic caster today. As you can see, melee magic is far superior to long-range magic. Krasu turned to Urian with a smug expression. He couldn't be bothered to deal with trash like Dracula. A 4th-tier magic caster. Is Amy already that powerful? She's a 4-year-old 4th-tier magic caster. What an exceptional prodigy. Surely even Princess Irina wasn't a 4th-tier magic caster at 4 years old. The customers in front of the restaurant immediately burst into a flurry of commotion upon hearing that. Amy was so adorable that everyone thought her to be a harmless little girl, but she had defeated a 4th-tier magic caster. All of them were surprised beyond words to hear that. A 4th-tier magic caster was an intermediate magic caster. In the City Lord's Castle and the Grey Temple, someone like that could become the leader of a small squadron. Looks like little Amy is a hidden powerhouse of Mamie Restaurant. When she says she is super fierce, she really is super fierce. Harrison sighed with emotion. Indeed. When Palmer came home today, he told me that Amy had become the hero of Chaos School today, beating 2 powerful magic casters from the Magus Tower by herself, and forcing them to concede the match. Trajay nodded with a smile. A 4-year-old 4th-tier magic caster? Looks like this little girl really is a super prodigy. I have to notify my brethren about this when I get back. We have to make sure not to mess with a supreme prodigy like her, especially when she has 2 terrifying masters like Urian and Kraus. Dracula made a mental note to himself as he overheard everyone's conversation. That's just a 4th-tier magic caster. Even a 5th-tier magic caster will be no match for Amy's ice magic soon. Urian pursed his lips in response. He wasn't enraged in the slightest by Krasu's words. Instead, he appeared to be brimming with confidence. That declaration caused another stir among all of the customers. How long had it been since Urian and Krasu had accepted Amy as their disciple? How could she improve at such a phenomenal rate? She was most likely going to shatter all of the records established in the magic world in the future. As expected of a disciple that the Lord of Ice and Lord of Fire had fought over. It made sense now why they were willing to set aside their century-long feud to take her under their wings. When that time comes, even 6th-tier magic casters will be trembling in the face of Amy's staff. Krasu wasn't backing down either as he joined the Sweet faction. We'll see about that. Urian chuckled coldly as he joined the Savory faction. Freezing winter descended on one line, while scorching heatwaves swept through the other as the atmosphere instantly became very tense. Dracula was very relieved to see that Urian and Krasu weren't paying any attention to him. As he passed by Blower, he took a glance at the latter with a hint of surprise on his face. An elven brat. Oh, look, if it isn't a high and mighty demon. Blower turned to Dracula with a hint of mockery in his voice. Are you talking about me, little brat? Dracula stopped and raised his chin in a proud manner. He looked at Blower with an arrogant expression, and said, We vampires are indeed high and mighty creatures. We only drink blood and are all gentlemanly beings of refined grace. Oh really, now? I heard a vampire was forced to eat grass by Princess Irina, is that also one of your so-called vampires who only drink blood? Blower raised a barbed question. All of the nearby customers were struggling not to burst into laughter. They didn't know whether what Blower said was true, but the image of a vampire being forced to eat grass was absolutely hilarious. How the hell does he know about that? Dracula raised an eyebrow. If he were to admit that as true, he would be too embarrassed to ever come to this restaurant again. Thus, he put on a calm facade, and said, How could something like that possibly happen? Even if it did happen, it couldn't possibly have happened to one of us vampires, and it definitely wasn't me. Really? Blower looked at Dracula with a suspicious expression, wondering why he insisted on reinforcing the notion that he wasn't the vampire in question. Of course it's true. We vampires have great pride and character. There is no way we would ever eat something like grass, Dracula replied sternly. What flavor tofu pudding do you eat? Constantine suddenly asked. I eat the savory tofu pudding, of course. Dracula looked at the amused smiles on everyone's faces, and he felt as if his dignity had been swept to the ground. He glared at Constantine before falling silent. That was a good question. Blower looked at Constantine with a hint of approval on his face. He didn't think that he would suddenly pose a question that would embarrass the vampire like this. It was quite a pleasant feeling to see the arrogant vampire taking a loss. You're too kind. May I ask you name? Constantine looked at Blower with a fawning smile. He was a little frightened by the glare Dracula had directed at him, but being praised by Blower filled him with joy and confidence again. Blower, Blower replied indifferently before looking away. Blower. At least I know his name now. Perhaps I can learn the secret to Shirley's heart from her brother. Constantine's eyes lit up with excitement. Why aren't you fighting today? Right at that moment, a little girl emerged from the restaurant with a kitten in one hand and a stool in the other. She sat down on the stool with the kitten on her lap and looked at everyone with a confused expression. Everyone in front of the restaurant instantly fell silent. All of the customers looked on with peculiar expressions as Amy sat on her little stool as if she were settling in to watch a good show. They were already used to Amy spectating their scuffles and cheering them on from the sidelines, but it still felt weird to have her there. It made them feel as if the debate in which they voiced their beliefs was nothing more than a cheap performance. Amy looked at the silent customers, and contemplated momentarily before turning to Krasu and Urian as she asked, "Master Halfbeard, Master Turtle, which one is more powerful between you two?" The customers standing behind Krasu and Urian immediately retreated a few steps in unison. At the same time, they were also quite curious. The two of them had had a century-long rivalry, and were now the leaders of the sweet and savory factions, so it would be interesting to determine which one was more powerful. "What do you think, little Amy? Remember that you used melee magic to defeat that most powerful opponent in the end." Krasu looked at Amy with a confident smile. "But Master Halfbeard, didn't I use a long-range spell to defeat him in the end?" Amy looked up at Krasu with an innocent expression. Krasu's expression immediately stiffened. "You see? Even little Amy admits that long-range magic is the most powerful. Krasu, your melee magic is useless." Urian turned to Krasu with a smug look. "But Master Turtle, I used the fireball magic that Master Halfbeard taught me," Amy continued. Urian's eyes widened as he choked on the rest of the insults that he was going to direct toward Krasu. "So I think Master Halfbeard's melee magic is super powerful, but the flames of extreme frost that Master Turtle taught me are also super strong. I don't know which one is better between the two, either." Amy looked at the two of them with a conflicted expression. What a naughty little girl, she's trying to goad the two great magic casters into battling each other. "I've never seen a battle between two great magic casters before, it should be a very interesting spectacle." Vivian chuckled. Amy isn't intentionally starting a fight. Her performance in the match today was nothing short of extraordinary. Both her melee and long-range magic were exceptional, and even if I were in her shoes, I wouldn't be able to pick which one was better. Luna shook her head with a smile. She had witnessed Amy's spectacular performance in person, so she knew why Amy was so conflicted. Who's this little girl's mother? How could she possess such extraordinary aptitude? I can't sense any magical aura from the owner of this restaurant, so he definitely isn't a magic caster. In that case, she must have inherited her aptitude from her mother. No one in the entire elven race can compare to her, not even the elven princess back when she was at her age. Blower looked at Amy with furrowed brows and a curious look in his eyes. "Ice magic is the most powerful, little Amy. You've already mastered the flames of extreme frost, so I'll be teaching you true ice magic next." A giant frost dragon materialized from ice and frost can dominate the heavens, and its invincible might is indisputable. Urian looked at Amy with a serious expression as he materialized an ice sword, which he thrust toward Krasu. "That's all just for a show. You can crush all ice magic with a single swing of your staff. Little Amy, I'm also going to start teaching your more powerful melee magic from now on. In the future, you won't have to fear magic casters or knights, you'll be able to take them out with your staff with ease." Krasu also wore a serious expression as he stomped his foot on the ground, materializing a wall of fire that kept the ice sword at bay. The customers behind them backed away even further. They were horrified by the notion of becoming collateral damage in a battle between these two insane powerhouses and dying. The situation grew more and more tense and grave. Spells unleashed by great magic casters were devastatingly powerful, and even though the spells were intentionally restricted to a certain area, the magic waves surging through the air still sent chills running down everyone's spine. "We're open for business, please come in." Right at that moment, the restaurant's door opened, and Mag emerged from within with a smile as he patted Amy's little head. She really was a natural troublemaker. In all honesty, he was also curious who was more powerful between Krasua and Urian. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried that they would destroy his restaurant, he would want to instigate a battle between them himself. "All right, then." Amy shuffled her little stool off to the side and stuck out her tongue at Mag in a cheeky manner. "Humph." Krasua and Urian harumphed in unison as they strode into the restaurant. "I would love to get to know you better, Mr. Blower. May I have the pleasure of dining at the same table as you?" Constantine turned to Blower with an expectant gaze. "You can sit wherever you like." Blower gave an aloof response. They really are brother and sister. Even the way they speak and their personalities are so similar. It seems like Mr. Blower is easier to talk to, though. Constantine wasn't irked in the slightest by Blower's cold demeanor. Instead, he nodded with a smile. The customers began to enter the restaurant one by one, and Amy quickly noticed Blower. Her eyes lit up as she said, "Big brother, you're so good looking." A smile appeared on Blower's face. Being praised for his looks was very pleasing to him, and he was just about to give a reply. "It's a pity that you're a male elf, though. If only you were a beautiful big sister." Amy sighed with a wistful expression. "What's wrong with male elves? Why can't male elves be beautiful as well?" Blower's eyes widened. He didn't think that he would ever become a victim of sexism. Amy had clearly praised her for her beauty when she had visited the restaurant earlier for lunch. "This little girl is hilarious." Vivian couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Teacher Luna." Amy caught sight of Luna in the line, and she immediately stood up with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She then also noticed Vivian, and a curious look appeared on her face as she asked, "Big Brother Mustache, why are you with Teacher Luna?" "I'm good friends with Teacher Luna, so I came to have a meal with her." "Are you going to offer us a discount?" Vivian asked with a smile. "I can't do that, but Big Brother Mustache, you can pay for Teacher Luna's meal." "Isn't that what all men should do?" Amy asked with a serious expression. "What a crafty little girl." Vivian raised an eyebrow in response. "Looks like I'll be getting a free meal today, then." Luna turned to Vivian with an amused smile. "Why does that elf look so familiar?" A curious look appeared on Mag's face as he caught sight of Blower. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years old, 7th tier magic caster. Mag raised an eyebrow as he looked at the information displayed in his mind from the omniscient door. No wonder he looked familiar, he was the cross-dressing guy from earlier in the day. "Teacher Luna." Mag nodded at Luna with a smile in greeting. "Mr. Mag." Luna responded in kind. "Boss Mag, why aren't you greeting me?" Vivian latched onto Luna's arm in a territorial display as she looked at Mag with a smile. "Hello there, young sir." Mag turned to Vivian with a smile. This cross-dressing girl appeared to be quite close with Teacher Luna. Furthermore, it appeared that she was trying to stake her claim on Luna. Could it be that they were? Mag looked at Vivian with a meaningful glance. "Let's go eat, Luna." Vivian was a little displeased that Mag had called her young sir, but she had already achieved her objective of staking her claim over Luna, so she entered the restaurant with a joyful expression. Vivian, human, female, 19 years old, 1st tier knight. A string of information appeared in Mag's mind, and he smiled as he thought to himself, as expected, it is a cross-dressing girl. We've had a cross-dressing man, and now we have a cross-dressing woman. How interesting. Mag had seen through Vivian's disguise the first time she had ever come to the restaurant. Judging from her smug expression, she was probably still under the impression that she had pulled the wool over his eyes. "Who's that?" Within the restaurant, Sally was surveying Blower with narrowed eyes. That elf gave her a familiar feeling as if she had seen him somewhere before. Furthermore, the aura that he was giving off was quite similar to that of the female elf who had come in earlier for lunch. Blower also glanced at Sally, but didn't say anything. He had come rather early, so there were still some vacant seats in the restaurant, and he picked one to sit in. Constantine sat down across from him with a smile on his face. He opened the menu, and said, "This is your first time here at Mamie Restaurant, right, Mr. Blower? Let me tell you, Boss Mag's food is the absolute best you'll find in the Aiden Square. I'll get a Young Joe fried rice, a mocha ice cream, and a sweet tofu pudding as well," Blower said to Yabimiya without even looking at the menu. "All right, please wait a moment." Yabimiya smiled with a nod before turning to the dumbstruck Constantine as she asked, "What would you like to order?" "I'll have the same as him, thanks." Constantine quickly regained his composure and gave a response. "Sure, please wait a moment." Yabimiya nodded with a smile before turning to the kitchen. Constantine was constantly trying to find conversation topics, but Blower only gave an occasional response while most of his attention was focused on Sally. "That's Madame Aisha, a waitress here at Mamie Restaurant. I don't know how Boss Mag was able to convince such a beautiful elf to work as a waitress for him." Constantine had also noticed that Blower seemed to have taken an interest in Sally. "Aisha? Looks like she's changed her name to hide her identity. Working in a bustling restaurant like this with such a shoddy method of obscuring her identity isn't going to work. Even if Ingu doesn't tell anyone, it won't be long before news of her working as a waitress here will travel back to the Brewster family." Blower raised an eyebrow. He turned to Constantine with an intrigued look, and asked, "Do you know how long she's been working here for?" "About a month, I think. In any case, she was here the first time I came to this restaurant. Mamie Restaurant has only been running for about a month, and it has already achieved high rankings in the Aiden Square food competition. That's nothing short of extraordinary." Constantine was very excited as it was the first time Blower had asked him a question. "I see." Blower nodded before falling silent and ignoring Constantine again. He had heard everything else he needed to know from Ingu, so he didn't require any more information from Constantine. Constantine had thought that he had successfully struck up a conversation, but he was back to being ignored again. However, he still tried to make small talk in order to try and curry favor with Blower. Sally was also carefully surveying Blower. She didn't know who he was, but it was quite concerning to her that two powerful elves had visited the restaurant in a single day. If they were from the Wind Forest, then they had very likely come for her. She had only just reached Chaos City, and she didn't want to go back home so soon. That was not what she had set out to achieve. She wasn't sure when she wanted to leave Mamie Restaurant, but she still had dreams. She trusted that she would leave Mamie Restaurant one day and embark on another journey. Elves had long 800-year-long lifespans. She didn't want to spend the entirety of those 8 centuries in the Wind Forest, nor did she want to give herself to a man she had never seen before. Furthermore, there was a blueprint in her heart. Even though the elven brethren traveling the Norland continent had been abandoned by the god of life, she still wanted to gather them together and convince them to return to the Wind Forest so they could return to the embrace of the god of life. Living without a home nor faith had to be very depressing. She didn't want to become the elven queen, but she did want to guide her brethren back to the Wind Forest. "Luna, what do you want to eat?" Vivian turned to Luna as she flipped open a menu. "Don't you want to eat spicy grilled fish?" Luna asked with a smile. The spicy grilled fish had cured Vivian of her crippling illness, and Luna was absolutely overjoyed for her. In the past, she very rarely saw Vivian smile. She was only 19 years old, but she was like a dying old lady. The torture of sleeping in pain every night had taken far too severe a toll on her. But now, she had completely transformed into a brand new person. She was full of energy again, and even had aspirations of becoming a teacher. Vivian had always been annoyed by children in the past, so Luna found it incredible that Vivian would consider such a pursuit. Yes, spicy grilled fish is my favorite. Vivian nodded with excitement. She contemplated momentarily before asking, how about we try out the insanely spicy grilled fish today? I don't want to. Luna immediately turned her down. She didn't like foods with strong flavor, and she had almost been floored by just a medium spicy grilled fish before. She simply couldn't imagine how spicy an insanely spicy grilled fish would be. All right, then we'll go with super spicy instead. Vivian asked. Sure, that sounds good. Luna nodded with a smile at the sight of Vivian's expectant gaze. All right, let's get a medium-size super spicy grilled fish. Vivian decided with elation. I really want to eat tofu pudding, but if I order it straight away, that little half-elf girl is going to laugh at me. What should I do? This is so annoying. Dracula was engaging in an internal conflict. He glanced at the tofu pudding image on the menu, and he could already feel himself salivating. She won't notice if I place my order quietly, right? After a long hesitation, Dracula finally made up his mind. He ushered Yabimiya over before saying quietly, I'll get a savory tofu pudding and a braised chicken and rice. Sure, please wait a moment. Yabimiya nodded with a smile. She recalled that he was the vampire who had been exposed to be a grass eater back during the conference between the dragons and the demons. Uncle Bat, did you order the savory tofu pudding? It's a pity that our restaurant doesn't sell grass. Amy made her way over to Dracula with a smile on her face. All of the nearby customers turned to look at Dracula with intrigued expressions. He had just vowed to never eat vegetables earlier, but tofu pudding was made from soybean, so it was technically a vegetable-based dish as well. This little girl is the devil. She's just like that elven princess, she's even more terrifying than us demons. Dracula stared at Amy. For some reason, her smile really reminded him of another smile, one that still sent chills running down his spine on remembering it to this very day. There's some dried prawn in the tofu pudding. That's what I'm trying to eat. Of course, as a gentleman, it would simply be unbecoming of me to waste food, so I guess I'll have to eat the entire dish, Dracula responded with a serious expression. A vegetarian vampire, how rare. Blower turned to Blower with a hint of a smile on his face. What do you have against me? I don't think I've met you before this. Dracula turned to Blower with a perplexed expression. Even as a gentleman, he was still a vampire first and foremost, and as such, he had his own dignity and temper. All of the customers turned to Blower with a hint of concern in their eyes. They were laughing with him as he insulted Dracula, but none of them dared to directly insult the powerful vampire. After all, he dared to blatantly fly over Chaos City in broad daylight, thereby indicating that he was at least an 8th-tier powerful being. He appears to be a 7th-tier magic caster, while Dracula is a 9th-tier vampire. If an altercation arises between the two of them, he has no chance of winning. Sally was also looking at Blower with a concerned expression. She didn't know Blower, but she didn't want to see him being hurt by a demon. Does an elf need a reason to hate a demon? Blower appraised Dracula with a mocking smile as he continued, during the war among species, you demons joined forces with the orcs to invade the Wind Forest, slaughtering countless of my elven brethren. Some things can fade with time, but in the hearts of some people, some things can never be forgotten. Very good. I accept this reason, you may treat me with whatever attitude you like. Dracula looked at Blower with a hint of surprise before nodding in response. Some things will never be forgotten? Sally looked at Blower with a thoughtful expression on her face. She knew a bit about the war among species. In the initial phases of the war, the elves were almost driven to extinction. Only under the guidance of the Queen did they manage to ward off the combined attacks from the demons and the orcs. After over a century, the Wind Forest had finally recovered to its former state. Something like that will never happen again. The elven race is more powerful than it has ever been, Sally thought to herself. With the powerful elven army, the elven race could stand against any race without worrying about the wind forest being breached again. In that case, it's quite possible that he comes from the wind forest. I wonder if he recognizes me, and if he does, will he spread word about where I am? Sally was getting quite anxious as she looked at Blower. You are indeed a gentleman. Blower looked at Dracula for a while longer before nodding and turning away. Of course I'm a gentleman. I'm the most gentlemanly vampire in this world. Dracula nodded with a content expression. You're so cool, Uncle Bat, Amy praised with a smile. I enjoy hearing honest praise like that, little girl. Dracula turned to Amy and nodded with satisfaction. But you're still miles away from my father's level. Amy chuckled. So, am I still supposed to be happy? Dracula's expression was a little strained. This little girl never seemed to play by the rules. I think you should be. Amy nodded. All right, then I'm very happy. Dracula took a wary glance at Krasua and Urian as he forced a smile onto his face. The dishes began to arrive one after another, and the customers became immersed in their meals. Constantine was still trying to find conversation topics, but Blower was just too haughty and aloof, just like Shirley. He simply treated Constantine as if he didn't exist, making it very difficult to strike up a conversation. Blower finished his meal in silence. The delicious cuisine struck him with an incomparable sense of enjoyment, and even though it was his second time dining at the restaurant, he was still stunned by its amazing dishes. Blower put down his spoon and looked down at his spotless plate. He then raised his hand, and said, I'm ready for the bill. Allow me, it'll be my treat today. Constantine hurriedly stuffed the remaining half of his Rugiamo into his mouth before pulling out his wallet. I'm Blower Baybilly. Blower rose to his feet and offered a dragon coin to Sally. Sally's hand suddenly stiffened in midair as she was about to accept the coin. Her pupils expanded drastically as she stared at Blower, and the water element in the air around her became very volatile as if they were going to implode. Don't worry, I'm not here to fight you. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak to you after the close of business tonight. Blower looked at Sally with a calm expression. Sally looked at Blower cautiously, and hesitated momentarily before the faint blue light covering her hands faded. The water element around her also settled down as she accepted Blower's dragon coin and handed him a gold coin in return. She nodded, and said, All right. I'll wait for you, then. Blower turned and made his way out of the restaurant. You. I'm also ready for the bill. Constantine looked on with a dumbstruck expression, clearly unable to comprehend what had just happened. Blower was inquiring him about Aisha earlier, but he suddenly seemed to be very familiar with her. However, he didn't have any time to ponder this further, and hurriedly paid his bill before rushing out of the restaurant. Looks like he really is from the Wind Forest. I wonder if Sally will leave with him. Mag looked at Sally from the kitchen with a hint of concern on his face. The super spicy grilled fish is amazing. I feel like my entire body is on fire. Vivian panted heavily with sweat pouring down her face, but she was looking at Luna with an elated expression. It's too spicy for me, I don't think my stomach will be able to handle any more. Luna's nose and eyes were both red, and she was dabbing at her eyes with a white handkerchief to suppress her tears. This level of spiciness was beyond her tolerance, and even eating just a little was too much for her. It's all right, Luna, you'll be fine. I eat this stuff every day, and I'm perfectly okay. Vivian waved her hand before placing another large chunk of fish into her mouth. The spicy flavor spread along her tongue, and then throughout her entire body, expelling all of the frosty energy within her meridians. After increasing the spiciness level from what she normally had, this feeling became even more pronounced. At this rate, I feel like I'll be cured in a month or two. Vivian was overjoyed. Then you should eat some more. This spicy grilled fish was practically made for you. Luna was also looking at Vivian with a joyful smile. Countless doctors and magic casters had tried and failed to cure Vivian's condition, but in the end, it was cured by a delicious spicy grilled fish. Fate worked in some amazing ways at times. That's true. After I'm cured, I'm going to send a plaque over to the restaurant that says greatest doctor in history. Vivian nodded with a smile. Luna couldn't help but burst into laughter. She flicked Vivian on the forehead, and chuckled as she said, "Where is Boss Mag supposed to hang up a plaque like that? He's a chef, not a doctor. Chefs who can't cure illnesses aren't good chefs." Vivian shrugged in response. "Whatever you say." Luna scooped a spoonful of tofu pudding into her mouth to alleviate the scorching spicy sensation. She still preferred foods with more subtle flavor, after all. That elf sure was good looking. It's a pity that he's gone now, I haven't seen eye candy like him for a long time. Vivian looked at the restaurant entrance with a slightly forlorn expression. "Have you fallen in love?" Luna asked with a smile. "Of course not. There's no way I'd like him." Vivian raised an eyebrow as she whispered, "Plus, do you think a man as good looking as him would like a woman who's uglier than him? A man like him would only look for a woman more beautiful than him. Either that or he's into other men." "Hey, that's going too far." Luna glared at Vivian as a horrified look appeared in her eyes. "Hee, you never know." Vivian chuckled before turning her attention back to her grilled fish. Sally looked at the restaurant's entrance with an unsettled expression. She had envisioned being identified by one of her elven brethren countless times in her mind, but never would she have thought that the first person to identify her would be Blower Baybilly, the man that was supposed to be her fiancé. The Baybilly family had a higher status than the Brewster family in the elven race, and that was why the marriage had been agreed on without her consent. As for this fiancé who was known as the most handsome male in the elven race, Sally had seen him back when she was a child. She recalled that he was constantly spying on Princess Irina and her group of little friends while perched on a tree, and that was the only memory she had of him. Who would have thought that he would suddenly turn up at Mamie restaurant to seek her out? Who was that elf during the lunch service, then? Sally thought to herself with furrowed brows. Her peaceful life had been interrupted all of a sudden, and she would either have to return to the Wind Forest or leave Mamie restaurant to embark on another journey. She found both of those options very frustrating. "Aisha, what's wrong?" Yabimiya laid a hand gently on Sally's arm and handed her the gold coin that she had just taken. "Oh. Nothing." Sally forced a smile onto her face in response. She accepted the gold coin from Yabimiya, and did her best to focus on doing her job. "What's going on with Aisha? She isn't normally like this." Yabimiya was a little concerned as she looked at Sally. However, she was quickly called over by customers who were ready to place their orders, and she didn't have any time to ponder the issue. Sally ran away from home, so it's only normal that people from her family want her to return home. Whether she wants to go home or not is her choice. If necessary, I can perhaps ask Krasua and Urian to help her. Mag was also rather concerned as he looked at Sally. He had anticipated that this day would come, but he was still feeling quite conflicted when this scenario actually eventuated. "Boss Mag, I would like to extend another offer to you to open a restaurant on the Demon Islands. I swear on the honor of the vampire race that your safety will be assured, and business will be just as good if not better than here." After paying for his meal, Dracula extended another earnest invitation to Mag. Before Mag had even given a reply, all of the customers had turned to Dracula with enmity in their eyes. If they had any say in it, Mag wasn't going anywhere. "Do you think the honor of the vampire race outweighs the two of us?" Krasua looked at Dracula with a meaningful expression. "Back then, there was a blabbermouth who swore on the honor of his ogre race that he would eat me. After that, ogres ceased to exist in this world." Urian also turned to Dracula with a calm expression. His voice was very tranquil and placid as if he were discussing the weather outside rather than mass genocide. "Come to think of it, I think it's good that your restaurant is here, Boss Mag. I'll be sure to come back in the future to enjoy your food again." Master Krasu, Master Urian, please enjoy your meal. Dracula felt a chill run down his spine, and he immediately forced a smile onto his face as he hurriedly retreated out of the restaurant. As soon as he was out the door, he spread open his massive wings and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mag looked on with an amused smile as he swallowed the rejection that he hadn't even had a chance to utter. Bye, boss, bye, little Amy. Yabimiya and Sally bade farewell before leaving the restaurant. After exiting the restaurant, Sally turned to Yabimiya, and said, Mia, you go home first today. I still have something that I need to do. Aisha, are you really all right? Yabimiya was quite concerned as she looked at Sally. She had been very absent-minded the entire night, and now, she was separating herself from Mia to do something on her own. I'm fine. I just need to go and meet someone, don't worry about me. Sally shook her head with a smile. It was good to know what at least someone was concerned about her. All right, then. Be safe. Yabimiya nodded before departing. You can come down now. After Yabimiya's departing figure had faded in the distance, Sally turned her attention to a large tree near the restaurant, where a figure was reclining on a sturdy branch. Let's go somewhere else. I don't want anyone to overhear our conversation. Blower took a glance down at Sally before drifting down lazily from the tree that he was perched on. He then turned and made his way deeper into the square. Sally hesitated momentarily before following behind him. Father, are we still not going to bed? Amy yawned as she looked at Mag, who was standing at the restaurant's entrance. Coming now. Mag closed the door before picking up Amy and Ugly Duckling in his arms, and making his way upstairs. There wasn't really anything that he could do about Sally at the moment. He simply wasn't powerful enough at present, so he could only keep a low profile and let Sally make her own decision. What do you want from me? If you're trying to persuade me to go back to the Wind Forest, then you can forget it. I won't go back. Sally looked on with a cold and wary expression at Blower, who had stopped in front of a patch of flowers. I've only just come to Chaos City as well, I don't want to go back so soon. Blower turned to Sally with a lazy smile, and said, Ing received information that you were working at Gaia Hotel and Mamie Restaurant, so he relayed it back to the Baybilly family. My father then sent me here with a very simple objective in mind. He wants me to approach you and make you fall in love with me, thereby making our engagement a reality. Even if you know where I live, you won't be able to stop me if I want to leave. You're only a 7th tier magic caster, as is Ingwu. Sally wore a slightly grave expression on her face. Her worst fear had been realized. Blower was indeed here for her, and not just coincidentally passing by. Furthermore, the Baybilly family already knew of her location, so it would be unrealistic for her to continue to stay at Mamie Restaurant. However, she didn't understand why Blower would tell her all this. If his goal were to approach her, then what he was doing simply didn't make sense. You don't have to worry. I don't like you, and I have no intention of marrying you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you all this. Instead, I would act according to their plans and make you fall in love with me. Blower smiled at the cautious Sally, and said, Of course, with my stunning beauty, any woman would fall in love with me even if I didn't try. What do you want, then? Sally's brows furrowed as she looked at Blower. She had heard about his narcissistic tendencies back when she was at the Wind Forest. It appeared that those rumors were true. However, she was more interested in what he had to say. If he really didn't like her and was opposed to the engagement as well, then perhaps they could work out a deal. I want many things, but those things do not include you. If you want to continue to stay in Chaos City, then you have to cooperate with me in putting on an act. Otherwise, even I can't ensure that information regarding your whereabouts won't be disclosed to the Brewster family. Brewster looked at Sally with a smile. How do I cooperate? Sally asked. Their objective in sending me to Chaos City is to get me to approach you, then establish a relationship with you. That will ensure the success of the marriage alliance between the Brewster and Baybilly families. If they become aware of the fact that there's no way for a relationship to blossom between us, they'll take that information to the Brewster family, and exchange it for some benefits. However, if they think that I have a chance of conquering you and taking you as my wife, then they'll try to create more time for us to be together, thereby keeping your whereabouts confidential to everyone else. Blower looked at Sally with a serious expression as he said, "So, all you have to do is pretend to be interested in me, and you'll be able to buy time for yourself." Sally looked at Blower in silence for a long while before asking, "Why are you doing this? How do you benefit from helping me?" The smile on Blower's face faded, and was replaced by a serious expression. "That's simple. I also want freedom. Chaos City is a very interesting place, and I want to stay here for a while. However, I need your help to do that, and I need you to promise me something." "Promise you what?" Sally looked at Blower with a wary expression. She didn't believe for a second that Blower would help her from the kindness of his heart, especially when he was supposed to be her fiancé. "You most likely haven't heard about this, but this morning, Princess Irina left the Cave of Life and killed Schubert, the leader of the Kral family." Blower didn't give a direct reply to Sally's question. "What?" Sally stared at Blower with incredulity on her face. Schubert was an extremely esteemed individual in the Elven race, and his Kral family held an even higher status than the Brewster family. And yet, Schubert, his family's head, had been killed by Princess Irina? How had something like that happened? Ing only just received an urgent letter detailing this event earlier in the day. Blower began to elaborate on the contents of the letter as he said, "Schubert brought everything upon himself. Princess Irina was put in detention for a year for killing Schubert, but that's only a trifling punishment considering the crime that she had committed. You know what that means, right? An elf without freedom isn't an elf." Sally listened to Blower's words, and she felt as if the ideals that had been drilled into her ever since she was a child had received a heavy blow. "I agree with the princess's views on freedom, but the current elven race is both free and powerful. If we overthrow the current social system, then the elven race will inevitably become weaker. In that case, other species will be able to slaughter us as they please again. When that time comes, more elves would lose their freedom, and be humiliated even further." Sally shook her head as she said, "What we should be doing now is to convince all of the elves roaming the continent to return to the Wind Forest. Only then will our elven race become more powerful. 100 years ago, the elven race was able to force the demons and orcs out of the Wind Forest. This revolution is not enough to make the elven race fall apart." Blower looked at Sally with a serious expression, and asked, "Besides, do you really think that the roaming elves want to return to the Wind Forest?" "Why wouldn't they want to return to the Wind Forest? Only there would they be able to receive the blessings of the God of Life and be protected by more powerful elves. Those who roam outside the Wind Forest must deal with threats from beings of foreign races every day, even survival is a problem for them, so what kind of happiness and freedom could they possibly derive from such a lifestyle?" Sally asked. "I've only left the Wind Forest several times before, but in my opinion, this world is different from the one you see. The roaming elves on the continent do not come under constant threat from beings of other races as you claim. Instead, many elves are able to quickly adapt to their new lifestyle. For example, in Chaos City, many elves have joined the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple, thereby becoming regulators of the city, allowing them to live peaceful and free lives." Blower shook his head in response. He looked at the indignant Sally with a mocking smile on his lips as he continued, "Also, why would they leave the Wind Forest in the first place? Are you unaware of the reason behind their decision? Following the war among species, Mistress Helena began to revolutionize the elven race. Ever since then, more and more elves began to leave the Wind Forest. They haven't been abandoned by the God of Life, this was their own choice. They don't need protection, they need freedom. The elven race is protected by nature, and the god of life won't abandon them just because they left the wind forest. I only trust in what I have seen. In the wind forest, our brethren lead safe and peaceful lives. Also, the number of elves leaving the wind forest has decreased significantly in the past few years. Instead, more and more elves are returning to the wind forest. Doesn't that mean that the wind forest is becoming a better place? Sally was still clinging to her beliefs, but her voice was clearly no longer as certain as before. They're not leaving, because they've been shackled to the wind forest. An invisible wall has been established around them, preventing them from leaving. As for the elves that returned to the wind forest, do you think they willingly came back so they could become slaves for the major families? You live a free and carefree life in the wind forest, but do you know how many elves were reduced to slaves in order to support your lifestyle? They don't have a single shred of freedom to speak of. The mockery on Blower's face grew even more pronounced, and he looked at Sally as if he were looking at a silly little girl. She was a typical young mistress of a major family who had been brainwashed by the elven education system. If it were someone else, Blower would have definitely already turned away and left. However, Sally's identity was rather special, and he could also sense the sympathy that she had toward other elves. From her perspective, Helena's revolutions had made the elven race more stable and powerful. The major families were stronger than ever, and they were making the entire elven race far more efficient. Those were the main benefits brought about by her revolutions. He had also been of this same opinion once. There was even a time when he had been a strong advocate of Helena's revolutions, thinking that what she was doing was making the elven race a better society. That was until he began to come into contact with the elves of the lower social classes, and those elves that had supposedly come back voluntarily to the wind forest. Only then did he discover the dark underbelly of the elven race. He knew then that Helena's revolutions were nothing less than disastrous for the elven race. As such, Blower felt as if he could see a younger version of himself reflected in Sally. Back then, he'd also hoped that the elves roaming the continent could return to the wind forest, where they would then be able to live in safety and comfort. However, what he wanted now was to help more elves escape the place that was once considered to be the holy land of the elven race. He wanted to release them into a wider and freer world where they could find happiness. Sally looked into Blower's eyes, and she felt as if each and every one of his words had dealt a heavy blow to her. She thought back to the servants tending to her family. They seemed to never have time for rest, and were constantly busy. If they made the slightest mistake, they would be scolded, and even receive physical punishment. Are they really happy? Sally thought back to all of those exhausted faces and shook her head internally. She rarely ever saw them smile, so how could they possibly be happy? They had been enslaved and lost all of their freedom. They were even prohibited from leaving the territory of the major families that they served. Even though the major families had enslaved elves according to the new elven laws, Sally discovered upon deeper thought that those elven servants hadn't done anything wrong to deserve enslavement. In fact, some of them were enslaved simply as they had accidentally trespassed onto the territory of one of the major families. What a sick joke! In that instant, the ideals that Sally had firmly upheld for the past 2 decades began to crumble. She was even beginning to suspect whether the elven race had truly become more powerful. Elves don't need stable lives. Nature is our home, and without freedom, we will lose our souls. Blower looked at Sally with a serious expression as he said, "If you want me to help you stay in Chaos City, then promise me one thing: if you become the leader of the Brewster family or even the Elven Queen, give all elves true freedom rather than this supposed life of safety and stability." Sally pursed her lips as she looked at Blower, but she didn't respond to his words. "I'll come to Mamie Restaurant again next evening. I hope to hear your decision then." Blower didn't pressure her any further, and nodded before departing. What is true freedom? Sally was left standing alone under the moonlight. She stared at her own shadow, and fell deep in thought. In the restaurant, Amy had just taken a bath and put on her pajamas, but she no longer felt like sleeping. Instead, she turned to Mag with a beseeching look in her sparkling blue eyes. "Father, Can we go look at the stars? All right. Mag was about to tuck Amy into bed, but he simply couldn't refuse her adorable request. Yay! Let's go look at stars, Ugly Duckling. Amy picked up Ugly Duckling with elation, and began to rush toward the balcony on the third floor. Mag followed Amy upstairs with a smile on his face. The moon is so round and beautiful today. It looks like it would be really delicious to eat. Amy looked up at the bright moon with a joyful expression. Mag also looked up at the bright moon in the sky, only to find that it was almost a perfect full moon. After hearing Amy's words, he began to reminisce about the days when he would enjoy mooncakes during the moon festival. It was sad that those days were gone. Father, can the moon be eaten? Amy asked with curiosity etched on her little face. According to the time in this world, it should be the moon festival in 3 days. Even though the moon festival doesn't exist in this world, it couldn't hurt to have some mooncakes and celebrate the occasion. A plan began to hatch in Mag's mind.